Part 20. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 191. After the lookout shouted a reminder. Aboard the Queen. Everyone stopped moving. Whether they were munching on brown bread, secretly drinking a few sips of rum to quench their thirst, or lying on the deck and taking a nap, or flatteringly helping Wang Tiandi comb his messy hair, everyone stopped. The actions of his men. Wang Tiandi opened his eyes dissatisfied. Woof woof. But after the dog opened his eyes, he didn't unreasonably give the dog hair grooming specialist a paw. With a bit of curiosity, he stepped forward and rushed to Yi Lin's side in a blink of an eye, stretched out the dog's head, looking out over the ship. Well, he is just a dog, not a real dog, so he is still very reasonable. Yi Lin felt that the atmosphere was strangely solemn, so she whispered to the experienced Ruth around her, "What is a ship tomb?" As they asked, the two approached the bow of the ship. Ruth also had a solemn expression, and could no longer care about secretly ogling Elizabeth Lin. She quickly came to the fence, took out the monocular telescope from her body, and then held her breath and observed carefully. Telescope? Yi Lin remembered that she seemed to have such a gadget. So Yi Lin also secretly crushed the card and took out one of the props found on Titiga Island. Exquisite military monocular telescope. It has no special properties, it's just a telescope. Yi Lin squinted her eyes and looked into the distance. I saw the remains of countless ships floating on the sea like corpses in the distance. The original appearance of the shipwrecks could no longer be recognized. They were all in pieces. Some of the shipwrecks even had the hardest keel broken into pieces. It was unknown what force caused it. It looked very scary. It's the pirate flag. No. There's also the Navy's flag. Ruth's pupils narrowed slightly. Above several of the shipwrecks, she used the incomplete flags to roughly identify the possible origins of these ships before they were intact. Soon. After a general observation, Ruth identified the wind direction and realized that Yi Lin didn't know anything about navigation and didn't bother to get Yi Lin's consent, so she quickly issued instructions one after another. Attention, kids. Keep your spirits up. We are about to pass the ship grave. Lower the sail. Slow down. Slow down. All sailors, please stay in your position and don't run around. Be prepared for emergency evasion at any time. All gunners in position. Get ready to load. Following Ruth's instructions, all the sailors did not dare to be lazy when they learned that the Queen was about to pass the ship grave. Even the tipsy pirates sobered up in an instant. According to their respective positions, they were on the deck and cabin. It's busy here. It has to be said that although Yi Lin's method of recruiting crew members is somewhat unique, through the crew panel, although the loyalty of the pirates recruited by Yi Lin on the ship is not high, except for Floor Charlie, most pirates are not mediocre. They are all skilled pirates who have experienced many battles. At the very least, if killed, the chaos value is not low. After lowering the sail, the Queen's speed suddenly slowed down. Ruth's plan was obvious. She would follow the established course and sneak through the ship graveyard. Because after identifying the direction and intensity of the surrounding currents, Ruth discovered that even if the rapids retreated at this time, it was already too late. The waves caused by the sharp turn would actually cause too much noise. 5 minutes later. The slow-moving Queen is about to enter the ship graveyard range. Ruth doesn't need to remind her that all sailors who specialize in combat have the standard combat equipment of a flintlock gun and a scimitar in one hand to be alert to their surroundings. But compared to their previous experience of passing through the ship tomb, they felt more confident now. After all, the captain of this ship is a skeleton gentleman who knows black magic. Not just any pirate. Even if something emerges from the bottom of the sea, I believe that the skeleton gentleman captain who masters black magic will be able to push anything back into the sea. Seeing that the atmosphere was tense, Yi Lin did not dare to neglect and let go of her senses. Well, there's nothing wrong with the safety measure of the barrels being tied together. Yilin was relieved. The Queen was cautious. The sailors were also cautious. The atmosphere on the entire ship became eerily quiet. Click click click. Around the hull, there was the sound of waves lapping against the hull from time to time, as well as the sound of the hull hitting the wreckage. The sea area where the Queen is located has long been far away from the land. The experienced pirates are not naive enough to think that this vast expanse of shipwrecks just ran aground on the rocks. Ruth took a deep breath, and seeing that nothing had happened for the time being, she explained to Yilin. However, before Ruth explained, Yilin understood the meaning of ship grave as the name suggests. The ship's graveyard. But for some reason, everyone's expressions, including Ruth's, were so tense, and the atmosphere was so solemn. If I guess correctly, these ships should be left behind by something unexpected happened when a group of Navy warships were exterminating pirates. Only dense shipwrecks will form ship graves, and after a long period of sea erosion, these shipwrecks will be washed away to all corners of the sea, and most of them will be washed ashore with the tide, or it's a shipwreck of such a large scale that sank to the bottom of the sea. In other words, the disaster just happened here. If I guess correctly, it will take no more than 3 days for a disaster to occur here. Yilin gave Ruth a strange look. Aren't you a tavern owner? How come you are so proficient in these things? Ruth rolled her eyes and did not explain why she was so proficient. Instead, she continued to explain on the topic of ship grave. And this kind of disaster that completely destroyed the fleets of both sides, in addition to natural shipwrecks, may be some kind of sea monster from the deep sea, or maybe. Ruth's voice gradually became quieter, and finally she seemed to be worried about something. She looked around a few times and quickly lowered her voice. Anyway, no matter what, it's okay if it's a hurricane or something like that, but if it's a sea monster or something else, it's very possible that that thing hasn't left the sea yet, so we have to be careful. Yilin thought for a moment and asked the skilled student Ruth, why don't we turn around and sail away from here? Ruth knew that her darling Elizabeth Lynn was a sailing idiot, so it was no surprise that Yilin would ask this question. Then he explained with a smile, haha, you don't understand. If it is really a sea monster, our current course is following the current and wind direction. If we forcibly sail against the current, it is possible that even the smallest currents and tides will disturb it. Clear. After hearing Ruth's explanation, Yilin roughly understood. In other words, once you encounter a ship grave, it means that the sea area around the ship grave is very likely to hide some kind of monster such as a sea monster, and it is more likely that it is not full and is still wandering nearby. Generally speaking, if such a small boat passes by quietly, the sea monster may not care. If it causes too much noise and disturbs the big sea monster to rest, the Queen is very likely to join this ship graveyard in the next second. Extended family. It's no wonder that the experienced pirate sailors immediately reduced their movements after approaching the ship's grave, and they didn't dare to breathe out. That's why. It's not Yilin's fault. In terms of sailing experience, maybe even Charlie, who is the combat floor of the Queen, can surpass Yilin by dozens of blocks. On this ship, Captain Yilin deserves to be ranked second to last in terms of sailing experience. The last one should undoubtedly be Wang Tiandi. Wang Tiandi leaned his head forward and took a few glances. After seeing nothing of interest, he simply lay down at Yilin's feet, shook his hair, and basked in the sun. Yilin glanced at the dog at her feet speechlessly. Do you really think of yourself as the ship's mascot? Yilin was really curious about how this dog passed the previous trials in the other world. I remember that in another timeline, Yilin had never heard of Emperor Wang Tian and had never met him in a trial. Etc. There are 3 possibilities. 1. In another timeline, Emperor Wang Tian died early. 2. Because of some kind of butterfly effect after Yilin's rebirth, a dog became an apostle. 3. If Emperor Wang Tian's trajectory does not change, then in another timeline, Emperor Wang's level is far beyond Yulin's imagination. Don't think too much about the dog for now. The scope of this ship tomb is beyond everyone's imagination. Amidst all the ulterior motives, the Queen carefully passed through this ship graveyard. A few drops of sweat broke out on Ruth's forehead. She kept looking ahead with a monocular telescope and calculated the scope of the ship grave on the nautical chart. Half an hour later. Finally, there was a sea area without shipwrecks ahead. And the sea monster that everyone imagined did not appear. Super plus enjoy. No one wants to witness the horror of a sea monster. Even if some people have never seen it in their lives, they don't want to spend their lives to have such experience. No one found it? On the bow. Sax was trembling slightly, staring straight at the various shipwrecks floating around the Queen with a complicated expression. Yulin noticed that there were some strange marks on these shipwrecks. Some shipwrecks actually had an arc-shaped gap with sharp edges, as if they had been burned by something, and were as black as coke. In Yulin's impression, it seems that there is only. Yulin's face darkened, and his intuition told him that it was unlikely. Finally, when the Queen completely sailed away from the ship grave, and until the spectacular shipwreck gradually disappeared on the sea level, all the pirates on the Queen breathed a sigh of relief and poured a lot of wolfberry into their mouths. Rum. For pirates, rum is a constant companion. Drink when you are happy, drink when you are happy, drink when your wife dies, drink when you find treasure. In short, women can live a life at sea, but they must not stop drinking rum. After a false alarm, Yulin silently returned to the cabin. Emperor Wang Tian was basking in the sun outside, and there were lookouts on the mast. Generally speaking, life at sea was boring and boring. Unless something unexpected happened, it would be very boring. Yulin silently marked another cross on the calendar. He's recording the date. If we don't make detailed records, we will probably forget the concept of time in this vast sea. Just when Yulin was about to untie the little white rabbit, Ruth quietly opened the door and walked in. In the eyes of others, the first mate and the skeleton gentleman captain have a close relationship. They are almost good brothers covered with the same quilt, so no one feels strange about the behavior of first mate Lewis. Anyway, everyone who understands understands. The sea surface is sparkling and full of moonlight, as if it is covered with a layer of golden gold. When Ruth slipped in, she was a little disappointed to see that Yulin was still awake, but soon she laughed like a gangster, stretched out her hand towards Yulin, and moved her fingers. "My dear captain, I need a little help. Do you want to massage your sore shoulders?" Yulin originally wanted to refuse. But when I think of that very practical buff, I can't help but nod. Just when Ruth was about to take action. In silence, Yulin suddenly asked, "What are you really afraid of when passing by the ship graveyard?" Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 192. Ruth. Suddenly. In the cabin, candlelight flickered, as if the atmosphere suddenly became much gloomier. Ruth fell completely silent. Yulin took off her mask, and her azure eyes belonging to Elizabeth Lin stared at Ruth silently and flawlessly. Yulin smiled slightly. "To be precise, I should ask, what is it that you are really afraid of?" Since entering this world, Yulin noticed from different angles that there was a name that was like a taboo. Both the Navy and the pirates were taboo about it. No matter what, they did not dare to let that name out of their mouths. It's like, once you say that name, some kind of terrifying existence will be summoned. Whether it's Nolando, Ruth, or the pirates on the ship. All of them clearly knew that name and the meaning behind it, but they hesitated every time, making Yulin have to care. Ruth remained silent. Yulin recalled a certain syllable that Nolando said inadvertently when he first boarded poor Nolando's ship. Magic. Ruth's expression changed drastically. She was so frightened that she fell on top of Yulin. She stretched out her hand and covered Yilin's mouth tightly. There was an uncontrollable fear in her eyes. "No, I beg you, don't say it, you will kill everyone." Yilin slapped away Ruth's palm, covering his mouth, a little surprised by Ruth's fierce reaction. What horror does that name contain? How could Ruth, who knew the sea so well, show such a fearful expression? Yilin observed that when the sailors mentioned the sea monster, they were just afraid, but not to the extent that they dared not even mention the name. In other words, the existence that the pirates knew was more terrifying than the legendary sea monster? Curse. Ruth shook her head, her expression flickering. "No, you don't understand, that is, something more terrifying than a curse. Not even mentioning names." Ruth gradually calmed down and looked helpless. "No matter who it is, no one wants to be buried in the sea. Will bringing a woman on board bring bad luck? But aren't we still here?" Ruth tilted her head. "Think about it. That makes sense. There are currently 2 women hiding on the Queen. Isn't it quiet this week and nothing happened? It seems. The legend may not be credible." Ruth's resolve was wavering. Yilin struck while the iron was hot and looked at Ruth longingly. Ruth sighed, subconsciously stretched out her hand, and used her skilled massage technique to buff Yilin silently. "It's just a buff, nothing special." Ruth's small hands kneaded Yilin's shoulders. After a moment of silence, Ruth sang softly in a low and hoarse voice with blurred eyes. "Yo-ho, the dark sea, the gloomy sky. Yo-ho, who is floating in the mist. Hey, why are you so panicked? Its eyes contain anger, its limbs are like iron towers. Yo-ho, the ocean is its cradle, the sky is its bedding. Sailors and cannons, rum and ships are just its food. King, can you hear me? It whispers in my ear. Ah, King, he ate the ship, he ate the sailors, he ate the rum, he ate us." Yilin did not interrupt Ruth singing from beginning to end. Although Ruth's tone was like singing the pirate song, it was full of the unique pirate accent, like a weird and wild ballad. But between the lines, Yilin felt a very secret fear, especially the last line of the lyrics. In the ridiculing tone, there was an incomparable despair hidden, like a king and his attendants, facing a behemoth, despair. They looked up, smiled at each other, and faced death. Ruth sang the entire ballad word for word, as if she had done something extraordinary, and breathed a long sigh of relief, giving people a feeling of relief. While singing, Yilin also gained a buff on his apostle panel. Abundant. Massage completed. "What song is this?" Yilin looked calm. Ruth's expression struggled for a few seconds, but she suddenly remembered that nothing happened to the 2 women when they went to sea, so she became a lot more courageous, and she kept doing it. She simply lay next to Yilin's ear and whispered, "This song is the song of the Demon King, is also known as the Forbidden Ballad. It is said that this song must never be sung on the sea. Because it is said that the Devil King is everywhere in the sea. If the Devil King's song is heard in the sea, it will attract the covetousness of the Demon King, and everything will become food for the Devil King." Demon King? Is this the existence that makes no Lando stop talking? Is this the existence that makes all sailors so fearful that they dare not even mention their names? Heh, interesting. As certain existences in this world gradually unveiled their mysteries in front of Yilin, Yilin felt more and more that this world trial was not as simple as it seemed. After Yilin gets the buff. Suddenly his expression froze and he stared at Ruth speechlessly. "Take your hand out for me." Sure enough, hormones affect personality. Yilin always felt that something was wrong when playing the role of Elizabeth Lynn and being manipulated like this by Ruth. Ruth. Dang 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 dang. Suddenly, the alarm in the captain's cabin rang wildly. This was the first time the lookout sounded the alarm to notify all crew members to enter the battle immediately after discovering something strange. Yilin. Ruth. Yilin and Ruth looked at each other. At this moment, the 2 of them actually thought of the same word. Devil King. On deck. Sailors were cheering, "Go go go. Rush. Go, go, go. Brothers, get angry." The moment the alarm sounded, whether they were drunk, or on night watch, or sleeping soundly in hammocks, they all entered the fighting state in a very short time, put on their boots, and soon set foot on the road. Deck, waiting for further instructions from the captain and first mate. Yulin and Ruth were even more confused. After all, Yulin had removed all the restraints for the convenience of getting on the buff. Now it would take a lot of time to tie her back into Molly's shape. Moreover, Ruth had just sang the devil's song in the cabin. Not long after she finished singing, an enemy alarm was immediately heard, which really made it difficult for Ruth to calm down. It was like a basin of cold water poured on the blazing fire, extinguishing it completely. Harder. Harder. Breathe in. Breathe in. Tear. Ruth skillfully tightened Yulin's corset, and then she didn't dare to talk nonsense, let alone take advantage of the opportunity. She quickly dressed up, remade herself into Lewis mate, and left the captain's cabin before Yulin, appearing in front of everyone. Before. As for Elizabeth Lynn. Captain Skeleton Gentleman? In the eyes of all pirates, their terrifying skeleton gentleman who knows black magic is extremely mysterious. In addition, everyone believes that the dog lying on the deck all day long with the commissioner combing its hair is their captain's eyes, so, even if Yulin doesn't show up, they feel it's very normal. The dog sat up at the right moment. From lying on all fours on the ground, he changed to sitting on his butt with his hands folded in front of his chest. A mysterious smile appeared at the corner of Guz's mouth. This gesture of Emperor Wang Tian made everyone more convinced that their great captain skeleton gentleman was using his unique black magic to control everything and this ship. That is a man, who uses dogs to spread fear. Boom. The captain's cabin door slammed open. Ruth was wrapped tightly and neatly dressed, appearing in front of everyone. What happened? Report to the first mate. There's a ship ahead. There's a ship. It's the Royal Navy. Oh. Navy. That's okay. The moment Ruth heard the word Navy, she breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it's just the Navy. It's not like a Demon King. First, they passed the ship graveyard, and then sang the song of the Demon King in front of Yulin. At that moment, Ruth really thought that her singing had attracted the Devil King. If this is really the case, the efficiency of this Devil King is too high. Oh no. Navy. Ruth reacted suddenly. Even if you encounter the Royal Navy, you will be very unlucky, right? Ruth quickly straightened the monocular and looked in the same place. On the horizon, the shadow of a mid-level warship gradually appeared. On the top of the warship, the flag of the Royal Navy was waving in the wind, very loud. Navy. Yulin didn't know when she had already put on a gentleman's outfit that was incompatible with the pirates on the ship, and stood quietly behind Ruth like a shadow. Ruth was startled when she heard Yulin's voice coming from behind her. When she reacted, Yulin also took out a monocular telescope and looked into the distance. If in normal times, when Yulin was indifferent, Ruth would not have to ask for Yulin's consent and directly issue instructions to make the Queen move swiftly without any ambiguity. But now that Yulin has come out, whether overtly or covertly, out of respect for the captain, Ruth politely asked, "Captain, what do you think we should do?" "Well, beat him." Yulin poked and said. Ruth immediately issued an order, "Everyone get in position. Prepare to fill the right rudder. There is a navy ahead, and the Queen is about to evade dash." "Oh, dear Captain, what did you just say?" Halfway through issuing the order, Ruth suddenly felt something was wrong. Just now her dear sister Rin, the real owner of this ship, seemed to be saying, "Beat him." Ruth felt that the wind must have been too loud and the waves too intense, causing her to accidentally have auditory hallucinations. No pirate chose to take the initiative when facing the Navy's warships. Unless, there is no choice. On the contrary, Yilin responded to Ruth in a tone of "There is something wrong with you, huh? Didn't I make it clear enough? Charge up and sink the ship. Pirates are different from the Royal Navy. Beating him is not natural. Ruth. All the pirates. Queen. Emperor Wang Tian, wow. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 193. Emperor Wang Tian seemed to understand Yilin's words. He barked non-stop and suddenly became excited. The two shining dog eyes were like two green light bulbs on the Queen in the dark night. Hit the Navy. Among the pirates, someone suddenly whispered something. Are we going to beat up the Navy? Aren't you going to run away? We are pirates. But the captain is right. Isn't it natural for pirates to beat up the Navy? Oh. Wait, what does it mean? Oh, damn, can you drink this? Ruth's eyes widened. Finally, she realized that Yilin was not joking. Yes. This logic is clear and coherent, without any flaws. As a pirate, you should fight the Navy. Yilin nodded affirmatively. What magnification is your telescope? Ruth. Yilin didn't waste any time and directly put the military-grade telescope in her hand into Ruth's hand. Ruth raised the telescope and took a look. Yilin's telescope was much higher definition than her own cheap telescope, and it was not coated. With just one glance, Ruth could judge all the movements of the warship in the distance. The Queen is being targeted. The Navy warship is chasing this way at full speed. Ruth's expression was solemn. In her mind, she quickly calculated the sea currents, wind direction, and visually measured the tonnage of the opponent's warship. Various data gradually converged into a terrifying answer in Ruth's calculations through the navigation skill. Even if you turn around now, you will be caught up sooner or later. Unless, the Queen can be protected by the sea. But is this possible? There are two women on board the Queen. It is very possible that the warship in the distance is also the bad luck brought by the two women. Thinking of this, Ruth no longer hesitated. Like a woman in the wind, she put down her telescope and decisively issued instructions. Listen to the captain's orders. The Queen is ready to attack. Yo! All the pirates cheered instantly. The element of adventure already flows in the blood of pirates. Although the pirates are greedy for life and afraid of death, at this moment, they have inexplicably gained confidence in the ship and their captain. Maybe it's because of what Yilin did on Titaga Island, or maybe it's the mysterious black magic he displayed. If it were this kind of mystery, standing opposite the pirates, these pirates would definitely turn around and run away without hesitation. However, now, the skeleton gentleman with the mysterious power of black magic is the captain of this ship. And that dog that slaps people to death. All of this is a source of confidence for the pirates. In an instant, all the pirates on the Queen, as if they were on fire, began to move neatly under Ruth's command. In the dark night. The other side of the Queen. It is a heavy warship reinforced by armor. The Brave. It is said that the origin of the name of this ship is to commemorate the Intrepid that was sunk by those damn pirates through machinations many years ago. Known as the Fearless Sister version. On board the Brave, a man in gorgeous clothes and an officer's wig, with a calm face and as resolute as a knife, was holding a telescope and staring at the sailboat flying the Skull flag in the dark night without saying a word. Haha, did you really turn around? These damn pirates really don't dare to fight us head-on. Report to Lieutenant General Pope. The pirate ship has turned around. Should we continue to pursue it? Lieutenant General Pope, humph. Move forward at full speed. As long as it is a pirate, We will never let it go. The adjutant standing next to Lieutenant General Pope hesitated for a moment. Lieutenant General, do you think the governor's fiancée will be on that ship? Haha, how is that possible? Lieutenant General Pope shook his head. Half a month ago, that idiot Nolando's fleet encountered a shipwreck and the entire army was wiped out. Nolando drifted to a desert island. If he hadn't happened to meet him passing by, on the merchant ship, Nolando had died a long time ago. Even Nolando, who had gone through rigorous training, could barely survive that shipwreck. Do you think that the governor's fiancée can do better than Nolando? Don't forget, she is a woman, haha, women are never favored by the sea. The adjutant couldn't help but ask, does Lieutenant General Pope also believe in those illusory curses? Pope smiled coldly, how could I believe it? Those are all old legends. As the Royal Navy, you must believe in science. Of course. Lieutenant General Pope changed his tone. If I were Nolando, for the sake of safety, after picking up the governor's fiancée on the ship, I would definitely sail along the coastal sea, drop the woman off after arriving at the royal port, and then pass through land transportation to return Ms. Elizabeth to the governor. The adjutant smiled and said, as expected of Lieutenant General Pope, he is really prudent in his actions. Etc. Lieutenant General Pope suddenly frowned. In the telescope, the pirate ship with a strange skull and crossbones flag actually had a white thing erected on its stern. Very bright in the dark night. If you look closer, you will see a pair of dirty white underwear. When Pope saw this scene, he was speechless. Seeing Lieutenant General Pope's strange expression, the adjutant also raised his binoculars. A few seconds later, the adjutant's expression was exactly the same as Lieutenant General Pope's. Ah, this? Those damn pirates are raising the white flag. Do they want to surrender? Lieutenant General Pope was silent for a moment, then suddenly laughed. My foolish lieutenant, do you remember the first lesson we learned at the Naval Academy? The adjutant nodded. Because on the title page of every Naval Academy textbook, there are 3 sentences neatly printed. Pirates must die. Pirates never have a true word. Beware of every pirate's rope. Every qualified Navy has memorized these 3 sentences of naval military training over and over again and knows them by heart. Lieutenant General Pope, remember, what we are facing are despicable and hateful damn pirates. They can rob ships, rob banks, destroy execution sites, and pretend to be judges. They do all kinds of evil. They surrender? It must be a conspiracy. My subordinate understands. Everyone, load the cannons. Move forward at full speed. Once the pirates enter the firing range, follow my instructions and be ready to fire at any time. A series of instructions were issued. Pope twisted the telescope in his hand. Suddenly, he looked into the widest view and saw an elegant and mysterious black figure. Is that a tuxedo? Pop couldn't help but raise a big question mark. Across the sea, on the other side? Queen. Yilin put down the telescope. As the 2 ships approached one after another, Yilin actually looked at each other for a while with a man on the enemy ship holding a telescope. The other party's commander. Yilin smiled slightly. Ruth looked nervous. She also looked through the telescope and roughly guessed the cannon equipment on the enemy warship. It seems to be just a mid-level warship, almost the same tonnage as the Queen. But obviously, judging from the opponent's hull, which was obviously reinforced with steel plates, if the 2 sides were to fire guns at each other, the Queen would undoubtedly suffer. People who wear geo are definitely afraid of wearing shoes. After all, if they step on each other, geo will definitely hurt more, no doubt. And the other party seems to be wearing iron boots. In the cold wind, Charlie covered his cold legs and shivered. Dear great captain, can loyal Charlie put on these pants? Ruth was speechless at Yilin's clever act of pretending to surrender. Do you really think they will believe it? I don't believe it. Yuren came to a conclusion. Then you still try. It's just a try. You won't get pregnant. But it seems that the impression of pirates in the Navy is very bad. Oh, by the way, Charlie, you can put on your pants and get out. Emperor Wang Tian squatted on the bow of the boat, waving in the wind. The two ships were getting closer. Ruth's expression became more and more nervous. The shells have been loaded. On the Brave, the iron plate on the bow of the ship made the sound of chains moving. 2 rounds of exquisite bow cannons were pushed out from the hull. The black barrels pointed directly in the direction of Yilin and Ruth. It's now. Ruth suddenly yelled, and while she was nervous, there was a hint of crack in her voice, and she had no time to pay attention. Anchor. Lower all sails. Full right rudder. Sharp turn. This backward sailing boat, when moving and turning, driving a boat is different from driving a car. Cars can race when they are told to race, turn when they are told to turn, and brake when they are told to brake. But if you want to maneuver a medium-sized sailboat, you must take into account the wind direction, current, and every structure of the boat. Thanks to Yilin's direct recruitment of nearly 200 people for the Queen on Titiga Island regardless of cost, the Queen currently lacks the most manpower. Hiss. Aboard the Brave. Before the Queen made a sharp turn, Pope also waved his hand and issued an order. Bow gun, fire. Destroy these damn pirates. Rumble. The Brave's 2 bow cannons spit out dazzling tongues of flame in the dark night, and the shells burst out of their barrels. But what no one expected was that just half a minute before the cannon was ejected, the Queen, which was within the firing range, suddenly made a 180-degree turn on the sea, and in the blink of an eye it was around the side of the Brave. The 2 ships were so close that in the sea breeze, Pope could even smell the smell of rum coming from the dirty pirate ship. The sudden sharp turn of the Queen only made the battle-experienced Admiral Pope stunned for a few seconds, and then sneered disdainfully, another of this old-fashioned navigation skills? Stupid pirates, don't you know that since fearlessness? After the number was destroyed by this move, your sharp turn tactics have already been recorded in the textbooks. Thinking of this, Pope continued to give instructions calmly, the damn pirates are on our right. Prepare the right cannon and load all the shells. Wait for my order. Aboard the Queen. Ruth bit her lower lip. Her tactic of making a sharp turn and then bombarding her was indeed an old-fashioned tactic. It was passed down by word of mouth among pirates and was said to be the wisdom left behind by a certain legendary pirate. But the other side seemed to be unfazed by this change. All the gun ports on the right side of the Brave were opened, and dozens of cannons were pushed out. They faced off coldly with the Queen across a small piece of ocean. Continue like this. Maybe it was the Queen that was sunk. Right now. No one among the pirates on the Queen noticed that Yilin raised the telescope again. Lock your sights on the figure who stands tallest and moves the loudest on the enemy ship. I guess you are the commander. Yilin murmured in a low voice, coughed twice, and spoke loudly into the air across the sea. Let the world feel pain from now on. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 194. Brave number. All the soldiers are high-spirited and ready to go. Everyone held their breath and prepared to light the fire, thinking about the scene of the damn pirate ship being submerged in the flames soon. Ah, that's the Queen covered in endless artillery fire. Suddenly. No one noticed that Lieutenant General Pope, who was standing at the top with the most awkward posture, suddenly trembled. Then he clamped his legs and slowly put down the golden-laid telescope in his hand that represented his identity. His expression was blurred, as if he was hiding something. Thousands of endless sorrows. The Queen has completely turned its bow and is about to pass by the Brave. Click click click. Aboard the Queen. All the cannon ports on the flanks were opened, the cannons were pushed out one after another, and the black muzzles were aimed at the Brave. But the brave one will eventually be fearless. The adjutant was full of pride, waiting for his respected Lieutenant General Pope to issue an order, so that his competent adjutant could pass the order seriously. Get ready, everyone is in position, huh? According to textbook experience, 1 second ago was the best time to fire. Boom boom boom. While the brave was silent, the Queen was no longer polite. A whole row of artillery fired, and the dark and round shells drew a graceful arc in mid-air. They fired neatly in a salvo, with more than 70% of the shells fired. It landed on the deck of the Brave. Bang 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 bang. Boom boom boom. The adjutant was completely shocked. He turned his head abruptly and looked at Lieutenant General Pope beside him, whose eyes were blurred and seemed to be in a daze, and seemed to be flirting with someone, with a confused look on his face. Lieutenant General, Lieutenant General. The adjutant reminded. The Lieutenant General woke up from a dream, looked down at the adjutant, and murmured to himself, "Huh? What's the matter?" The adjutant saw Lieutenant General Pope's expression as if he was sleepwalking. Seeing that the deck had been bombarded by a barrage of artillery fire, and his armor had been abandoned, and his army was unable to break up. He was so depressed that he vomited blood, but he did not dare to question Pope's decision. He just reminded loudly, "Lord Pope, please give the order. We must fight back. Please give the order to fire. Fire the gun. We must fire." Popper was shocked. He finally wakes up. His eyes flashed with fierce energy, dazzling like two bright stars in the dark night. Chiang. Pope suddenly pulled out the gorgeous sword inlaid with gold and diamonds from his waist, raised his head, stared at the charming sailing ship in the distance that kept firing at the Brave, raised his sword and shouted, "Coming, coming, coming." The adjutant perked up. "It's time to fight back, it's time." The adjutant shouted, "Everyone prepare dash." Pop raised his sword, and under the gaze of everyone, he finally shouted, "Everyone, stop it." Adjutant. Marines. Brave number. Pope shook his sword and his voice went straight to the sky, "No one is allowed to fire at that charming lady. Whoever dares to fire without authorization, I will hang him in the name of Lieutenant General. No, and add will punishment, chariot punishment, chair punishment, burning punishment, beheading punishment, dripping wax punishment, roller punishment." Everyone on board the Brave, when they heard the series of horrific punishments, not only took a breath of cold air, but their scalps became numb. Who dares to move? According to what Lieutenant General Pope said, whoever dares to fire cannons without permission will have to experience the royal punishment and the whole family will be punished. Fear, fear, terror. The entire Brave and all the elite navy were under this terrifying threat. No one dares to move. Boom boom boom. Boom 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 boom. On the other hand, the Queen. This wave of cannon fire was hardy. No one expected that the sparkling and well-equipped Brave would actually be silently enduring the artillery fire from the Queen as if it had misfired, with no desire to fight back. The pirates had never known that having sex was such a joyful thing before. The other party doesn't resist. How can you not be happy? Come. Be happy. Anyway, I have a lot of time. So cool. And the opposite side is the Navy. Ruth had no time to think about this weird scene. She was now standing on the deck, standing taller and louder than Yulin, enjoying the pleasure of shouting fire, over and over again. One word. Cool. Ruth's face was flushed, and she also felt that she was so happy. Below Ruth, Yulin put down the telescope in a low-key manner, and no one saw her. Hidden behind the smiling face was Yulin's slightly surprised expression. "It's actually charming? So lucky? Wait. Every time she thinks of lucky, Yulin always feels something strange." He suddenly seemed to understand something and touched the blood-stained ornate earrings equipped on his ears. This weird equipment brought a terrible charm value gain to Yulin, and by the way reduced a few irrelevant luck points. Is it related to the charm value? Yilin had a guess in her mind. After all, among the various digitized attributes of the apostle, the three main attributes of strength, agility, and spirit are reflected in the apostle's ability, while the will attribute reflects the apostle's different resistance to various negative states. As for charm and luck, as we all know, lucky values are related to various probabilities and draws. As for the charm value, in the Ghost Mist Mountain, Yilin witnessed with her own eyes how Li Chang'e opened the door of the old ghost hunter with extremely high luck value. After all, most of the effects of these two attributes are summaries of experience among the apostles, and there is no clear statement from the tower. Does the level of charm affect the triggering probability of the charm state in Disaster Haunted? Well, it is indeed very possible. Yilin nodded secretly. I remember that among the various negative states randomly produced by each disaster-ridden attack in the past, the charm state appeared relatively rarely, and it was most likely related to charm. And on the Brave, Lieutenant General Pope was so charmed that he was completely unable to issue the fire command. Even though the Brave's artillery fire is much more sophisticated than the Queen's, as long as it doesn't move, the Brave is nothing more than a moving target, allowing the Queen to ravage it. Seeing that Ruth was getting excited about the fight, Yilin seemed to have the urge to go back and fire again, so she quickly warned, "Quickly. They won't be silent for long." When Ruth heard this, she was startled. After hearing what Yilin said, she thought that the strange behavior of the brave warrior was most likely related to this mysterious captain. Dark magic. When Ruth thought about this possibility, she was excited and frightened at the same time, but she did not dare to continue and ordered quickly. "Attention everyone. Weigh anchor at full speed. If you don't want to die, move quickly, move. Sail. Go at full speed. We are going to escape, little ones. Boo-hoo-hoo." After turning around, the Queen also followed the direction of the wind again. Driven by the wind and current, the Queen directly reached its fastest speed on the sea, and soon moved away from the gun-marked Brave, gradually drifting away. And when the Queen was so far away that only two lights at the stern could be seen. On the deck of the Brave, the heroic Lieutenant General Pope suddenly trembled all over. Those blurred and determined eyes suddenly had a layer of doubt. When he came back to his senses, the first thing he saw was the shattered deck, the broken mast, the sail torn by cannonballs, the flames that had not been extinguished, and the stupid sailors standing on the deck swallowing saliva. Only then did Popper realize that something was wrong with his posture. "What are you doing with your sword? Take an oath?" But Pope reacted very quickly and immediately asked the adjutant beside him, "Huh? Where is that damn dirty pirate ship?" When the adjutant saw Lieutenant General Pope's belated look, he was so angry that blood flowed to his head, but he still pointed to the tail light of the Queen in the distance meticulously. "Respected Lieutenant General, that charming lady has already. I can't catch up right now." The memories of being charmed came flooding back. Pop also clearly recalled the stupid thing that happened on the deck just now. What the hum? Popper's face first turned red, then turned purple, and then quickly turned purple to black. After a few seconds, his body shook a few times, and then he opened his mouth and spit out a mouthful of blood. When the adjutant saw this, he couldn't help being shocked and shouted, "It's not good. The Lieutenant General is vomiting blood. Ship's doctor. Someone call the damn ship's doctor over. Report to the adjutant, the ship's doctor is dead. He was just blown up. Where's the ship's doctor's assistant? He's dead too. He just fell into the sea and drowned. Kill the excellent Royal Navy and gain add 52 pirate reputation. Get chaos value add 46. Get chaos value add 2. Kill the ship doctor who is not very good at medical skills and gain add 22 pirate reputation. Kill. Get chaos value." During the battle between the two ships, The screen in front of Yilin's eyes was filled with madness. In fact, after getting used to it, Yilin gradually felt that this feeling of being swiped on the screen was quite comfortable. Although he didn't expect it at first, his one shot of disaster would actually set the stage for the battle and save a lot of effort. Originally, Yilin had planned to swing to the opponent's boat with a rope and start a killing spree. He even kept the bullet deflection in his trouser pocket for ready use. But anyway, this is a perfect ending. The skeleton gentleman successfully won the first naval battle after he went to sea without using a single soldier. Perfect. After Yilin saw that the brave man was not chasing her, Yilin silently got back into the cabin amidst the hysterical cheers of the crew. Ruth will naturally handle the subsequent arrangements properly, and Yilin doesn't have to worry. At the end of a long list of information that floods the screen, there is this summary. Congratulations to the Queen led by Skeleton Gentleman for severely damaging the mid-level naval battleship Brave at Sea, with a comprehensive damage rate of 63%. If you win this naval battle, you will become famous in the Navy and gain reputation as a pirate. Value add 3,150. Note, Lieutenant General Pope hated the Skeleton Gentleman with all his heart. Lieutenant General Pope? Who is this? Forget it, it's not important. Although this battle was easy and enjoyable, Yilin gained a lot. On the captain's panel, after severely damaging the Brave and leaving a deep impression on the unknown Lieutenant General Pope, Yilin's reputation as a pirate has increased sharply. I believe this kind of naval battle will happen twice more. His reputation points can also be promoted to the next stage of fame. If you guessed it right, if you want to become one of the 9 pirate kings, this reputation value should be a crucial data. At the same time, Yilin also discovered another interesting thing. The Brave's armor was too thick, and the Queen was unable to completely sink the Brave at the wrong moment. But just by severely damaging the Brave, he was able to gain such a huge amount of reputation. Faction war? Haha. Yilin has gradually become familiar with some of the rules of this trial. Certainly. For Yilin herself, the most important gain is chaos value. From the explosion at the port of Titaga Island until now, Yilin's chaos value has exceeded 43,000 before he knew it. With just a few more waves, the Bat motorcycle that has been silent in the storage space can be blocked. Enter the module and reactivate the Apocalypse mount. In the cabin, Yilin rubbed her palms together and couldn't help laughing loudly. I'm looking forward to the new mount I'm about to get. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 195. 20 days later. The Queen sailed alone on the sea. Dazed and helpless. Ding ding ding. There were various sounds of forging iron coming from all around the Queen. The pirates carried the planks listlessly to repair the holes left by the Queen. Ding ding ding. Ding ding ding. Ah. Charlie looked up at the sky at an angle of 45 degrees. There was no cloud in the sky, but Charlie always felt that there seemed to be a smell called sadness in the sky. Well, it seems to also have a rum flavor. On the lookout. No one noticed that Xiao Sa, who was good at playing with ropes, was rubbing his palms and slowly exhaling a shot of white mist. Then he took out an ancient compass from his close arms and carefully identified the direction, his expression gradually becoming excited. Goo 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 goo. The sounds of hungry bellies could be heard from every corner on the deck. A pirate with a dark face took out a box from the bottom of the cabin. Hey guys, does anyone want some bread? Bread. Upon hearing this word, the pirates around them suddenly dropped what they were doing and rushed towards the box like a wolf. He, this is my treasure. The moment the box is opened, a musty smell rose into the sky, and even Xiao Sa, who was high up on the observation deck, smelled the smell of moldy bread and couldn't help but frown. Not only that. Among the pile of dark green moldy bread, there are still fat and white little insects squirming. Phew, kkk. Even the bugs are so hungry. They actually ate bread. Others broke down and cried. Generally speaking, pirates have the dignity of pirates. They can eat moldy bread, but they will never eat bread with worms. Unless, you're really hungry and can't stand it anymore. Etc. Another pirate suddenly thought of a way and secretly took out a piece of dried salted fish from the gap in a pile of wooden barrels. Yo! The moment they saw the dried salted fish, the surrounding pirates' eyes lit up. Don't get me wrong, this dried salted fish is also covered with bugs, but it's not for eating. Pirates who have experienced hundreds of battles have rich experience. They naturally have unique ways to deal with a box of bread that is moldy and full of bugs. Just put the dried salted fish on the top of the bread, and the hungry bugs in the bread will come out and burrow into the dried salted fish to eat, leaving the bread innocent. Then, a group of pirates gathered in a circle on the deck, staring longingly at the dried salted fish on the bread, silently in a daze. After 1 hour, the dried salted fish was covered with white bugs that were squirming endlessly. The moldy bread finally became clean. While eating bread, some people couldn't help but glance at the closed hatch on the deck, their eyes full of longing. It's almost time. Suddenly, a dog picked at the meaty bones and walked out of the captain's cabin in high spirits. By the way, he hooked his hind legs and closed the door tightly again. The pirates have long been accustomed to the clever actions of dogs. At about this time every day, the captain's dog will always run to the captain's cabin regularly, dig out a fresh bone, and then squat on the deck to bask in the sun. The minced meat on the bones was picked happily, making a clicking sound. Gudong. A whole shipload of pirates were hungry and gnawing on the moldy bread. Their eyes were bulging and bloodshot, staring at the bones in the dog's mouth, and they all swallowed the saliva in their mouths. By the way, I shed 2 tears of envy. Why the hell can a dog eat a bone, but we can only eat moldy bread? We are so envious. We also want to be dogs. Now that I think about it, there is nothing wrong with being a dog. Great Captain, can you give me a chance to be a bitch? All the pirates simultaneously made a beautiful wish to be a dog in their next life. Only, the pirates just thought about it in their hearts, glanced at it a little, and had a greedy look on their lips. Stealing the dog's bones. Haha, it doesn't exist. Remember a few days ago? There was once a naive pirate who was so hungry that he rushed to snatch the bones from the dog's mouth. In the end, the weak-looking dog slapped his chest to pieces with his paw, and he twitched on the deck for a full minute before he died happily. Everyone clearly remembers that poor pirate, as the queen swayed on the waves, the broken bones in his chest rubbed against the deck, making a clicking sound, which was very pleasant to the ear, but made everyone's scalp numb. Since that day, no pirate who was not afraid of death dared to covet the bones in Wang Tiandi's mouth. However, through observation, the pirates learned that the dog had another good habit. Every time a dog gnaws a bone, he will spit it out on the deck with disdain. At that time, a group of hungry pirates will desperately pick up the dry bones and lick them before they are completely dissipated. Meaty flavor. If you can't eat the meat, it's great to take a few bites. Yulin. In the captain's cabin. After sending Emperor Wang Tian away with a spare bone, Yulin sat on the bed again and studied silently. In fact, he hadn't appeared in front of anyone else for several days. The caring first mate Ruth is fully responsible for all daily life on board. There were no other outsiders in the cabin, so Yulin simply removed all restraints and showed her true self comfortably. He finally understood why some women in the real world didn't like to wear underwear. This unrestrained feeling really made Yulin feel a sense of freedom to let herself go. Yulin silently clicked a like. There is a roll of sheepskin in front of Yulin. There were 28 scratches on it. Today is the 28th day after setting sail from Titiga Island. Is it already a third of the way through the second main mission? Yulin shook her head helplessly, took out another small notebook from under the pillow, and looked at the scrawled records on it. Originally, with Yilin's memory, there was no need to write down such things. But this kind of aimless sailing life really makes it difficult for Yilin to find the energy to remember such boring things, so she simply uses this boring and stupid way to kill time. Sink pirate ships, 6. Severely damaged naval ships, 3. Encountered a storm, 2 times. Crossing the thundercloud zone, 2 times. Encounter with small vortex, 1 time. Encounter with cute little sea monster with tentacles, 1 time. This is the record of the Queen. These are also the various reasons why the Queen is currently so seriously damaged. Every time Ruth mentioned this, she always looked weird. She had no idea that she would experience so many disasters in just 20 days. What's even more unexpected is that the Queen can still survive to this day. Yilin closed her eyes and thought carefully. Soon, he opened the captain's panel again. Nowadays, Yilin is very proficient in various data and operations on the captain's panel. Captain panel. Name Skeleton Gentleman. Flag Gentleman's flag. Reputation 22332/30,000. Level famous all over the world. Skill Captain's Insight. Crew Ruth Emily, Saxophone Sparrow, Wang Tiandi. Click to view details. Curse bringing a woman on board will bring bad luck. Fleet Queen. As the reputation value required for subsequent reputation levels increases, the above-mentioned records only allow Yilin to upgrade from famous to famous all over the world. It seems that there is still a certain distance from Pirate King. Yilin shook her head, sighed, and pointed her finger at the Queen. The Queen's crew, supplies, equipment health, damage level, artillery shells, all the data are clearly listed in front of you. The comprehensive damage degree has reached 42%. Once it exceeds 50%, it is likely to affect the subsequent navigation. Moreover, supplies are currently in short supply. Yilin felt a headache again. This trial is not like in the game where you can skip the garbage time at will. Every minute and every second at sea, no matter how boring, must be experienced bit by bit. As fresh water and food become increasingly scarce, Yilin gradually feels the terror and vastness of the ocean. Even an apostle may not be able to fully bear this terrible loneliness and suffering. Yilin silently took out half a piece of brown bread that was not moldy from the storage space and took a bite. Ruth next to her had already moved forward and opened her mouth obediently. Yilin glanced at poor Ruth and stuffed the bread into her mouth. Seeing that Ruth seemed to be chewing the whole thing, she immediately pulled out the long piece of bread with a pop and quickly took it back. In the physical space to prevent the hungry Ruth from eating it in one bite. Ruth licked her lips and saw that the tempting bread magically disappeared again, with a look of resentment on her face. "My dear Captain, if you continue like this, you will lose me." Roll. Yilin has always had this neither salty nor cool attitude towards Ruth. Ruth sighed and stopped acting. "Dear Rin, according to my calculations, if we don't find a way to replenish supplies, our food and fresh water can only last for 5 days at most." In fact, if Yilin hadn't been able to conjure fresh food out of thin air like magic, Ruth would have been unable to hold on. Yilin nodded without saying anything. Besides, those guys couldn't sit still. If it weren't for your dog, haha. For pirates, credit is shit, and betrayal is commonplace. In this situation where food and water are gradually drying up, if it weren't for Emperor Wang Tiandi guarding the deck, the group of pirates would have risen up and rushed in desperately. Yilin's room was occupied with food. After all, Goze could pick out a fresh meat bone from Yilin's room every day. If their captain didn't hide food secretly, no one would believe it. Yilin already knew about Ruth's reminder. The biggest change on the captain's panel, in addition to the pile of material data, is the number and loyalty of the crew. After these 20 days, various battles and shipwrecks reduced Yilin's crew of nearly 200 people to 101 people, including a dog. It is worth mentioning that Charlie, the combat power floor, is still alive, which is incredible. Except for Wang Tiandi, whose loyalty is still 0, and Ruth's loyalty, which has strangely doubled, the loyalty of other crew members has plummeted, and many have fallen to negative numbers. Rebellion may occur at any time. As Ruth said, if it weren't for Guz's control and Yilin's sufficient intimidation in the previous naval battles, this group of lawless pirates would have overturned the rule of the skeleton gentleman captain long ago. Another half-day passed. Sax, who was on the observation deck, suddenly sounded the alarm frantically. "Are there any more enemy ships?" Ruth's expression changed, and she skillfully pulled it behind her, tied a standard bow on her corset, and quickly resumed her Lewis mate outfit and rushed out of the cabin. Because Ruth's figure is not as exaggerated as Elizabeth Rin's, she can get dressed more than twice as quickly as Yirin. Yilin felt helpless about this. Yilin quietly released Bai Xiaoi and quietly planted a hole on the deck. All I could see outside the boat was the dim light. There was a dense fog that was as thick as substance. At some point, the Queen sailed into a sea filled with thick fog. Seeing that the enemy ship did not appear as expected, Yilin quickly put Bai Xiaoi away. 10 minutes later, Ruth came running back. But her expression was a bit strange. "There seems to be an island in front of you. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 196. Half an hour later. Under Ruth's skillful service, Yilin dressed up again and appeared in front of all the sailors. With such a damn figure, even dressing up would be a challenge for Yirin without Ruth's help. Yilin had already put Bai Xiaoi away. Yilin has always tried his best to hide his abilities. Although in the eyes of the crew, their respected captain possesses mysterious black magic, no one knows what it is. Perhaps only Ruth was vaguely aware that Yilin would chant a strange spell when performing black magic. She obviously understood every word of this spell, but it sounded very strange to Ruth, with a kind of domineering power that she didn't realize was powerful. Yilin paused in her steps. He suddenly remembered something related to his life. He immediately took out an exploding bead from the groove on his waist and quietly threw it into the sea without anyone noticing. After a while, a small wave of waves suddenly rose in the ocean. There was a pop, as if someone secretly farted in the sea and no one knew about it. Yilin rubbed another one and stuffed it into the designated groove. These days, Yilin has been keeping the unstable explosives at 10. Once there is one that is about to expire and is ready to explode, dispose of it immediately and replace it with a brand new explosive bead. Otherwise, if the replacement is too late, the explosive beads will explode on the spot at the waist, and the consequences are needless to say. After dealing with the explosive beads, Yilin had walked out of the deck. After walking out of the cabin in person, Yilin discovered that the fog in the sea area was far thicker than he imagined. Observing with your own eyes is more intuitive than using Bai Xiaoi's vision. Yilin remained calm and reached out to fish out the thick fog. The white gloves were stained with a layer of wet mist. When she rubbed them with 2 fingers, Yilin could clearly feel the extra moisture on the silk gloves. Call out. On the observation deck, Xiao Sa, who is good at playing with ropes, flexibly swung a hanging rope and landed in front of Yilin like a monkey. His movements were very skillful. "Captain, there is an island in that direction." Sax didn't waste any time and directly pointed out the direction for Yilin. Although all the pirates had briefly tired of the color of the sea during the boring and thrilling voyage of more than 20 days, no one dared to board the island privately without the captain's order. "I heard that black magic is very scary. I heard that the captain can also eat people. I heard that the captain can make people ascend to the sky with just a finger. Various weird legends about the skeleton gentleman captain have long been spread among the crew. After all, in the past 20 days, whenever a ship approached them, they would be inexplicably thrown into chaos, making this group of experienced pirates engage in naval battles as smoothly as chopping melons and vegetables. It is said that these are the powers of the captain's black magic. As a result, although the loyalty of these crew members dropped significantly due to hunger, no riots or rebellions occurred. Yulin raised the telescope and looked in the direction Xiao Sa pointed. Sure enough, deep in the thick fog, the shadow of an island could be vaguely seen, like a ghost in the fog, exuding a strange aura. Suddenly, Ruth, who had been frowning in thought since helping Yulin get dressed, exclaimed, and took out a roll of sheepskin from the clothes on her chest, which was her treasured navigation chart. Charlie came up eagerly and said with a charming smile, "My respected captain, can we log in? The brothers are all hungry. Look, they are still licking the bone that the dog has eaten." Yulin followed Charlie's gaze and saw a dry pirate happily licking the bones that Emperor Wang Tian had chewed. There were still many bruises on his body. It must have taken a lot of effort to grab this second-hand bone. Hee. Yulin smiled and pressed her palms in front of her to signal her subordinates to be calm. 3 seconds later, the restless pirates were completely quiet. Everyone is eagerly waiting for the captain's next order. Each pirate looked at the distant island with longing eyes. In order to survive, even if there were some man-eating beasts hiding on the island, they would probably rush up there without hesitation, find food and fresh water, and eat and drink enough. What do you think, my first mate? Seeing Ruth comparing the navigation charts carefully, Yulin asked in a low voice. Of course, as a skeleton gentleman captain, you still have to have the necessary character. In the eyes of others, Yulin's tone is obviously that of a superior to his subordinates, and his attitude is cold enough. Ruth frowned and murmured to herself, how is it possible? How could the route deviate so much? Was the calculation wrong after which storm? How is it possible? Yulin slowly typed a question mark. Yulin knew nothing about navigational calculations, so she relied on Ruth's skill in this aspect. Ruth took a deep breath with a solemn expression. If I'm not mistaken, we should be in the Sea of Mist now. Sea of Mist. Hiss. Yulin didn't realize it, but the moment the other pirates heard these 3 words, there was a sound of gasping on the deck at the same time. After a while, a commotion broke out among the pirates. Damn it, how did we end up in the Sea of Mist? It is said that this place is. So, that island. Hey? Why are you so unlucky? Don't forget, our captain has the ability of black magic. What will happen even if we encounter him? But if we don't land on the island, we're all screwed. Except, of course, our great captain. Yulin frowned, feeling that the crew members were acting a little strange. He quickly pulled Ruth aside. Where is the Sea of Mist? Ruth looked helpless and shook her head. You don't know that in this sea, the curse has revived. There are many places called forbidden seas, that is to say, seas that cannot be entered under any circumstances. Unless, I don't want to live anymore. Yulin quickly let go of her senses. But within the range of perception, there is nothing special except that the fog is very thick. There are no reefs under the current water. There wasn't even a wreckage of the ship around. Yulin suddenly smiled. Could it be scarier than the song you sang? Ruth was silent for a moment. Think about it. It seems reasonable. In this sea area, what could be more terrifying than the Devil King? She even sang the song of the Demon King, and the Queen is still safe and sound. Thinking about it this way, Ruth felt a lot more at ease, but she still rolled her eyes at Yulin. It is said that there are undead souls in the foggy sea. Undead. Yulin lowered his head and thought for a moment. The undead you are talking about, are you referring to the kind that float in mid-air, never touch the ground, look translucent, and cannot be touched? Ruth was shocked. How do you know? Oh, that's okay, let's go to the island. No one knows that a certain captain with black magic is best at dealing with this type of creature. After the queen anchored off the island, Yulin casually pointed to a few crew members with higher luck on the panel, and as the vanguard, they took the lead in landing on the island in a small wooden boat. The luck value is high, relatively speaking, it is less likely to cause accidents. It stands to reason that this should be the case. At first the pirates were a little hesitant. After all, they have all heard the legend of the Misty Sea. Although they were very happy at first, when the matter came to pass, they still did not dare to land on the island before others. Until Yulin smiled and inserted a needle into one of them. Immediately afterwards, several people volunteered and scrambled to volunteer to be the vanguard of the queen. 10 minutes later, in the thick fog, in the direction of the island, there was a bright light in the distance. The vanguard excitedly signaled to the queen that all was safe. Yulin nodded and arranged for everyone to move the lifeboat out of the deck in an orderly manner, throw it into the sea, and sail to the island in the Misty Sea. The Sea of Fog is marked on the nautical chart as a thick fog, and none of the islands, routes, etc. in it are marked on the nautical chart. I don't know if it's because Ruth's navigational charts are too backward, or because this foggy sea is too mysterious. In short, what Yulin is about to land is an unknown island. Half an hour later, Yulin and Ruth stepped on the soil again. Beside the two, there is a dog. I saw Wang Tiandi violently shake the hair on his body, and completely dry the hair that was wet by the sea water. Woof! Emperor Wang Tian lowered his head and smelled the ground twice before preparing to run away. Wang Tiandi. Yulin suddenly stopped Guzi. Although the dog could not speak human words, it was clear that he understood human nature. When he turned his head, the dog's face showed a vivid expression of doubt. This made Ruth wonder, is this dog a devil? Yulin knelt down in front of Emperor Wang Tian and smiled slightly. We are allies, right? When Emperor Wang Tian heard this, he actually lowered his head and hesitated. Damn it! So it didn't count before? Yulin secretly complained, no wonder Wang Tiandi's loyalty has always been zero on the crew panel. It seems that this dog only regards himself as a breeder. Wang Tiandi held his chin, stuck out his tongue, and started thinking. For bone's sake. Yulin asked again. Woof. Wang Tiandi suddenly stretched out his paw. Yulin understood, one person and one dog, one hand and one paw, touched lightly in front of the two people. Now is the official alliance. After becoming a tentative ally with Yulin, Wang Tiandi went directly to the depths of the island, ran away, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Yulin looked at the direction Wang Tiandi left, shook his head, and whispered to himself, I thought you were just a dog, but I didn't expect you were a real dog. Ruth, what do you mean? Yulin smiled, nothing. After wandering at sea for more than half a month, Yulin still felt dizzy after setting foot on land again, as if she was swaying from side to side when walking, like surfing. This seems to be some kind of sequelae of long-term sailing, but I guess I will soon get used to the feeling of setting foot on land again. The soil on the beach was very fine. Ruth took off her boots and stepped barefoot on the beach. She showed the attitude of a little woman on her face, enjoying the short-term joy. It is estimated that after she stepped ashore, she immediately forgot about the horrifying legend of the undead haunting the foggy sea. Because Ruth thought twice and came to the conclusion. Are there undead at sea? What's going on with the island? It has nothing to do with half a coin. Ruth thought happily, wanting to take off her clothes and enjoy a pleasant sand bath on the beach. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew by, and Ruth shivered all over, shivering involuntarily. The wind is very cold. Moreover, the sound of the wind sounded vaguely like a woman's cry. Yulin walked in the cold wind. The back is straight. Other pirates were already hungry and thirsty, and rushed into the island frantically in search of fresh water and food. Yilin didn't bother to pay attention to them. He was just cannon fodder, so why should he care too much? If you really want to die, if you die, you will die. Suddenly, Yilin turned around. I saw Xiao Sa looking down at the compass and muttering to himself. Yilin suddenly remembered the curse on Sax, and kindly reminded him, "Be careful, this sea of mist is said to be haunted by undead." Sax attributes are more useful than those of other cannon fodder pirates, but they can't just be ignored. When Xiao Sa heard this, he trembled all over. He was so frightened that he immediately put away the compass and stretched his legs straight. "Yes, my captain." When Ruth saw Yilin starting to walk along the coastline, Ruth didn't care about bathing in the sand. She quickly caught up with Yilin's back and wiped the saliva from the corner of her mouth with a hiss. "Oh, this damn back view is like a Virgin Mary. Especially that peach butt," Ruth thought happily to herself. Yilin suddenly turned his head, and through the mask, he squeezed out a few words through gritted teeth. "Can you not say what is in your heart?" "Huh? Did I say that?" Ruth was slightly startled. Yilin was speechless at this female pervert and subconsciously wrapped her tailcoat tightly. The two of them walked on the beach, one behind the other. The sand underfoot was very fine, and Ruth's bare feet felt no discomfort at all. Instead, they felt like they were stepping on a soft bed, which was very comfortable. Suddenly, Yilin stopped moving forward. Ruth was following very closely. Seeing Yilin stop, she could have had enough time to react. After all, the dexterity level was there, but Ruth hesitated for 0.2 seconds, then straightened up her chest and went straight to Yilin's face. "Hit in the back. Doin'. Hey. Why did you stop?" Ruth rubbed something, making a shy look. Ruth lowered her head. "Do you think it's very romantic for the two of us to walk on the beach with no one else around?" Click click click. Yilin chuckled. "The premise is that there is a man and a woman, and..." After a pause in her tone, Yilin pointed forward with her finger and added, "There are no words about those things ahead." "Those things?" Ruth slowly typed a question mark. "Is it some mysterious little surprise?" Ruth showed her head from behind Yilin. The next second, her face turned pale and her skin color completely changed. "I saw the two of them walking to another corner of the beach at some point." Click click click. On the beach, there are scattered bones of many victims, a thigh bone in the east and a head in the west, densely packed all over the beach, like small pebbles dotting the beach, very romantic. Originally, for pirates, skeletons were more like mascots. Normally, no one would be afraid of a poor skeleton exposed to the sun and wind on a desert island. Unless, these skeletons can move. When Yilin stretched out her hand to remind her, the sea breeze blew, and instead of being blown away, the fog became a little thicker. In the thick fog, the bones everywhere shook violently. Click, 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 click. Like a disco-like rhythm, these shaking bones made this beach that had been silent for countless years become lively in the blink of an eye. Ruth. Compared to Ruth's panic, Yilin was unusually calm. In addition to being calm, there was also a bit of expectation. Well, the next step should be to reassemble these disco bones in place. Isn't it so unoriginal? Isn't it? Click click click. The decayed skeleton stood up after being reassembled. "Oh, no surprise." Yilin shook her head. "Huh? What's the matter with this damn translation accent? In front of you." The countless skeletons scattered on the beach looked a bit weird in the mist, and a little green light shone from the dark eye sockets. At first glance, it looks like stars shining green at night, giving people a sense of vitality. Ruth was not very experienced in this area and her legs were already weak from fear. But lying down and being passive didn't seem to be her style. Although she was scared, After being stunned for a few seconds, Ruth decisively pulled out the pirate scimitar to gain some confidence in herself. Here you go, watch your step and let me do it. Yilin thought for a while, took out the useless equipment that was almost rusty from the storage space, and threw it to Ruth for self-defense. Exquisite Ghost Sword. Yilin already has spirit-enchanted weapons that can be slowly upgraded, and the weapons in this local world are even worse than useless. But to Ruth, this ghost-headed sword had an extremely domineering appearance and a faint aura of attack. As soon as Ruth took it from Yilin, she immediately started playing with it admiringly. Click click click. The upper and lower jaws of all the skeletons were trembling like a convulsion. Although there was no sound, it gave people the illusion of laughing wildly. Click click click. Not only in front of them, but also behind them, the skeletons buried in the sand climbed up strangely from the sand and turned into skeletons, holding rusty swords in their hands and approaching the two of them unsteadily. Ruth was half of her own, so Yilin no longer hid. She flipped her palm over, crushed the card, and blood jasmine appeared in Yilin's hand. Huh! Ruth's eyes lit up. What Yilin displayed in front of her had always been mysterious black magic. This was also the first time that Ruth saw Yilin's real weapon with her own eyes. The two of them unknowingly seemed to have stepped into the realm of the undead. At a glance, there were countless green lights ready to move in the thick fog. If the skeleton in front of them didn't kill people, the two of them would seem to be soaking in the green ocean, playing in the water and rubbing their hair together. It was very romantic. But obviously at this moment Ruth completely lost the ability to long for romance. Yilin unleashed the maximum power of telekinesis. Within a range of more than 20 meters, there was a vast sea of skeletons, and she could not feel the end of the pile of monsters at all. Are you surrounded? Yilin took her time. After thinking for 2 seconds, he did not release Bai Xiaoi or Nai Hongxiu, nor did he use the inherent skills of the possessed weapon. In Yilin's opinion, the skeletons in front of him were just slow-moving little monsters. The so-called undead were actually not scary at all. It's like the ghost in Ghost Mountain. As long as there is a health bar and you can cut, kill, and fool, it is no different from the mobs in the game copy. The only difference may be that the attributes and models are different. However, Yilin's evolutionary direction is not a type that is good at group attacks. Yilin does not intend to waste too much spiritual energy until he has a clear understanding of the size of the wave of monsters in front of him. If he is alone, he can try to see if like a shadow is 100% effective against the so-called undead monsters. But Ruth is here to show off. If Yilin uses shadow to escape from the battle circle at will, Ruth, whose flesh and blood body is not very effective in combat, will be torn into Ruth-hob meat by the wave of skeleton monsters in front of her in minutes. Although the Kaihei tactics are old-fashioned, they have enough lethality. In this world, Ruth, who possesses the two major skills of massage, top, and navigation, advanced, is of vital importance. If it were not a last resort, Yilin would find a way to protect Ruth. Comprehensive. Follow me. Yilin warned in a low voice. Yo. Ruth instantly hit the snake on the stick and stuck it directly behind Yilin, and started groping around Yilin's body with her hands. Yilin. She couldn't care too much at the moment. With Yilin's current strength attributes, even if Ruth was carried on her body like a turtle shell, it wouldn't be too uncomfortable. The premise is, Ruth doesn't move around. Under the smiling face mask, Yilin had a cold expression, took 2 quick steps and slashed out with a knife. The strengthening of the killing technique has become equivalent to breathing. Yilin's breathing rhythm changes unpredictably, and the diaphragm, intercostal muscles, and other respiratory muscles tremble crazily. In the blink of an eye, he can detect the gaps between the bones. Wherever the knife goes, Yilin will be cut like a knife. Like a vegetable chopping a melon, he smashed a skeleton into pieces again. Seeing how brave Yilin suddenly became, Ruth was so excited that she forgot about the fear of facing the undead. She hung her whole body on Yulin and kept screaming. The sound reached her ears, as if she was for Yulin. Ren shouted in support. 10 minutes later, Yulin fought her way through the pile of skeleton monsters and carved a road paved with broken bones. No skeleton could withstand blood jasmine for even 3 seconds. Occasionally, it would only take more effort to encounter some stronger skeleton monsters. Yulin. There was still a thick fog in front of me. Yulin remained silent. The knife in his hand gradually slowed down. However, this was not because Yulin was tired, but because Yulin had already noticed something was wrong when he killed the first skeleton monster. There is no chaos value at all. In other words, Yulin's heart moved. She held the knife in her right hand, but her left hand suddenly reached out to her waist. Suddenly, Yulin's fingertips suddenly touched something strange. Acridine. Hurry up and take your legs off me. Otherwise I will throw you into the pile of skeletons. Good. After solving the troublesome matter, Yulin finally reached into the box on her waist and took out an explosive bead. Yulin's eyes narrowed slightly, and with a flick of his wrist, the explosive bead slipped out of Yulin's hand in a mysterious arc. Boom! That explosive bead was almost on the verge of exploding. After accumulating power for such a long time, the power of the explosion almost reached its peak at the same mass. This explosion instantly opened a path in front of Yulin. Yulin, with Ruth's face flushed, darted out from the gap in the pile of monsters. Hiss. Finally, Yulin rushed out of the sea of monsters. Although Yulin did not use any expensive skills, in the thick fog, Yulin used telekinesis to sense the surrounding situation from time to time. The going back and forth also consumed less than half of the spiritual energy value. Yulin turned around. The group of skeleton monsters behind him was actually broken into half by Yulin. In the thick fog, the swaying green light also decreased a lot, and there were many green light airstrikes, making it look scattered. Ruth didn't expect Yulin to kill out of the skeleton monster so easily, and her expression was a bit surprised. From this point of view, the undead are not as scary as the legend says. Sister, I suddenly want to kiss you. Ruth clamped her legs. If you dare to move, I will throw you out to feed the skeletons, Yulin threatened seriously. Click click click. Suddenly, just after Yulin rushed out of the sea of monsters. In the mist, the remaining skeleton monsters collapsed one after another, fell to the ground, and once again turned into bones on the ground. As far as the eye can see, there are bones. Densely packed bones. Unable to distinguish the parts of the bones. After charging through the sea of monsters so far, Yulin has not earned a single dime of chaos points, which makes Yulin feel aggrieved as if she was being used for nothing. But after it was over, Yulin still breathed a sigh of relief out of habit. Click click click. Of course. On the beach, bones everywhere began to tremble again. Huh? Unkillable type? Regroup. Still nothing new at all. Click, 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 click. Countless bones began to dance in place according to the rhythm again. Yulin hasn't finished speaking yet. A series of question marks immediately appeared. I saw that the countless skeletons strangely set off a wave of sand and piled up 10 meters away from Yulin, getting higher and higher, higher and higher, higher and higher. Yulin raised her head expressionlessly. In an instant, a huge skeletal hand was raised high from top to bottom, then fell heavily, slapping it towards the corner where Yulin and Ruth were entangled. Everyone is welcome to post more about this chapter and say that if you love me, you must say it loudly. It is easy to fall asleep while driving in silence. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Xueshi. Chapter 197. Island. Dense forest. There was thick fog all around. But strangely, deep in the dense forest, there is a peaceful scene of birds singing and flowers fragrant. Blah blah blah, blah blah. There is a gurgling stream that passes through the dense forest, and the alluring sound of water can be heard as it flows. Water. It's water. There's fresh water. Yo. Yo ho, let's turn sail together, raise the flag. Another pirate was so excited that he loudly sang the classic pirate song that has been passed down forever. It is estimated that 90% of pirates cannot even speak a few words with normal grammar, and they will only know the song in their lifetime. Another famous song, the Song of the Devil, many people can sing, but no one dares to sing it. Charlie cautiously blended in with the pirates, not daring to show his face. After all, this is the misty sea that is said to be haunted by the undead. Even though they are now on an island and not in the sea, the fear caused by the legends that have been circulating for many years will not be completely eliminated in a short while. Water. A clear stream suddenly appeared under Charlie's feet. Charlie spent 3 seconds to peel himself dry, jumped into the stream, and drank deeply. Alas! So delicious! Let all the undead die. All the pirates stepped out of the jungle and played in the water happily. It's lemons. Fresh lemons. Another pirate exclaimed. Chicken legs. There are even chicken legs. Oh, my God. It's hot, it's still hot. Wine. Gaga. Look. I actually found a dozen barrels of rum. Tisk, and there's no moss growing on it. I decided to take a bath with rum tonight. This place is like a paradise on earth. All the pirates were already hungry and crazy on the Queen. At this moment, seeing fresh fruits, fresh water, wine, and delicacies, they were so happy that they almost went crazy. They rolled around on the spot, letting the chicken legs and wine cover themselves. At this moment, all the pirates felt that unexpectedly, they all had the idea of never wanting to go to sea again. Go to the damn ocean. Go to hell, freedom. Go to the damn Queen. I want to stay here forever. The kind that never gives up. The loyal Charlie looked at the other big guys with envy. There are people gnawing on chicken legs to satisfy their hunger. Some lick lemons to replenish vitamins. There were people swigging rum. Only Charlie was soaking in the stream, soaked to the skin, looking like a duck about to be stripped naked. In such a comparison, the fresh water that seemed to be fragrant just now suddenly became less fragrant. Etc. Rum. Fresh water. Lemon. Charlie suddenly trembled and his movements stiffened. He suddenly remembered that this was a desert island. A deserted island in a misty sea, where birds don't poop and chickens don't lay eggs. The above-mentioned things seem to be explainable even if I insist on explaining them. But what's up with the warm chicken drumsticks? Isn't that outrageous? This is the Sea of Mist. In an instant, a revolving door seemed to be playing in the mind of the wise Charlie, and various legends passed down by his fathers orally passed through Charlie's mind quickly. Curses, sirens, mermaids, undead, ghost ships. Thinking of this, there seemed to be a loud bang in Charlie's mind. He blinked and looked at the pirates around him. There was clearly a bloody eyeball in the mouth of the old man licking the lemon. The hot chicken legs were clearly thigh bones covered in minced meat. The uncle who was drinking rum had steam coming out of his mouth, and the smell of urine swept over the whole place. Wait, is that fresh urine? Charlie's limbs suddenly felt cold, and he felt that the cool stream water under him suddenly became thicker, making it extremely difficult to move. Run away, run away. So slow. Charlie looked down subconsciously. The fresh water he was swimming in just now turned into red blood in the blink of an eye. Ah! While screaming, Charlie burst into tears instantly. Tears streaming down my face. The other side of the island. Emperor Wang Tiandi was wandering in the woods alone with his dog. Ah, I haven't smelled this fresh air for a long time. Wang Tiandi stood up his hind legs happily, and when he was about to leave his unique mark on the root of the tree with his unique posture and leg technique in a 360-degree rotation, the dog suddenly shuddered. After being stiff for a moment, the dog could only helplessly spread its legs and lie down. Half a minute later. Woof woof woof. The pea got on my fur, damn role-playing. No one in this world can understand the sadness of a majestic male dog turning into a shy female dog inexplicably. Boo-hoo-hoo. Rumble. After Wang Tiandi finished solving the problem, he dug into the soil with his hind legs and felled a big tree. After flawlessly covering up the traces of the crime, he carefully distinguished the unique smell on the ground. Track all the way. Finally, Emperor Wang Tian came to the other shore of the island. On the beach, a dilapidated and desolate ship, to be precise, it should be the remains of a ship, lying alone on the sand. This piece of shipwreck seemed to be torn in half from the middle by some terrible beast, and even the strongest keel was broken into a miserable shape. When Goza saw this, his pupils shrank suddenly and he couldn't help but squat on the ground, tilting his head and thinking deeply. Woof. After a few seconds, Goza decided not to think too much, followed the smell, and started digging hard at the wreckage. In front of Yilin and Ruth. Click click click. All the bones were reassembled, and the assembled thing was finally full of novelty, forming a shape that surprised Yilin. 10 meters away. All the broken bones seemed to have come to life, completely blending together and transforming into a giant nearly 10 meters tall. The head of the skeletal giant actually gives people a sense of postmodernist armor, and the two eyes emit a faint green light. On the giant's chest, countless skulls were entangled into a huge sphere, which looked like an armored cockpit. Countless dark eyes stared at Yilin and Ruth at their feet, domineering and even protecting Shubao. The kind that can't even be covered up. This. Ruth had never seen such a powerful skeleton giant before, and she was instantly stunned on the spot. Yilin squinted her eyes. There seems to be something wrong with this style of painting. How does this look so much like some expensive real-world figure? If this reassembled skeleton giant is moved to the real world, it will definitely make countless otakus obsessed with robot figures go crazy. Well, maybe classmate Li Erpang likes it very much. After all, he has a soft spot for tall and majestic characters. Boom. While Ruth was shocked, the giant skeleton slapped the two of them with one palm. Although the movement was slow, it carried a devastating momentum. Yilin smiled slightly and put away the knife. He directly carried Ruth on his back. Rin, what can you do? Ruth finally came to her senses and whispered in Yilin's ear. Although there was still a hint of charm in Ruth's tone, after getting along for a long time, Yilin could also detect Ruth's hidden fear. Hee. Ruth. Yilin said in a relaxed tone, of course, run. Do you think it can catch up with us with its size? When Ruth heard this, she suddenly realized. Skeleton giant. Suddenly. The giant skeleton with a domineering and majestic appearance froze in place and could not move for a long time. Ah! Just when Yilin decided to completely ignore the lump of bone, a shrill scream came from deep in the jungle of the island. Immediately afterwards, countless birds that inhabited the jungle were frightened by the screams and flew up one after another. In the mist, they looked like a dark shadow, which made people feel extremely depressed. Ruth looked up. It's the crew. Something happened to them. Although Ruth was indifferent to those dirty pirates, as the first mate on the ship, she also knew very well that she and Yilin alone could not drive such a large queen. Not to mention Yilin knows nothing about navigation. She sailed a boat by herself? Stop joking. After that scream, the screams of other people also began to echo each other, one after another, and it strangely seemed to form a gorgeous symphony with the surrounding environment. Song. Yilin silently opened the captain's panel and took a look. It soon closed again. The two of them were stuck in place. After Yilin thought for a moment, no one noticed. Yilin smiled behind the mask and walked from the beach into the dense forest. "Shouldn't we go back to the queen?" asked Ruth. Yilin. Ruth's expression suddenly became weird, and she subconsciously rubbed Yilin's back a few times. "You shouldn't, want to save those dirty pirates, right?" Yilin was immediately speechless. "Have you forgotten that I am the captain of this ship? I am still the pirate leader, okay? Hee, we are women, we are different." Ruth first smiled, and then said to Yilin in a serious tone, "Have you heard of the pirate code?" Yilin shook her head. Ruth chuckled, "Huh, I guess you don't know either. In the ancient pirate code, there is such a rule that can make pirates live longer. Yilin. Any pirate who lags behind is doomed." Yilin thought for a while. This sentence made sense to a pirate. Completely irrefutable. But as Yilin walked, she shook her head and smiled. "Have you forgotten that we are the ones left behind now? It's not important." Ruth's tone was rare and serious. "No pirate has ever risked his life for another pirate. If you want to live longer on the ocean, you must dash." Unknowingly, the two of them were surrounded by tall, twisted and jagged dense forests. The screams coming from the distance became louder and louder. Ah no, they became clearer. Ruth is still teaching Yilin how to be a qualified pirate leader. But Yilin suddenly interrupted Ruth. "Shhh, listen." When Ruth still wanted to say something. Abruptly. He, hi-ya, he, he. There were ups and downs, and Jiao's melodious laughter could be heard faintly. Listening carefully, these bursts of laughter sound like a girl, a young woman, or a lonely and empty woman in the boudoir. It is difficult to distinguish clearly, and it seems to come from the airs, rushing from all directions. Although even she herself may not be able to truly understand Ruth's current orientation, this burst of laughter sounded not at all beautiful to her, but instead filled with a chilling and weird flavor. Hiss. Ruth couldn't help but shudder. Yilin dropped Ruth casually. Covered by the mask, Ruth couldn't tell Yilin's expression at this moment. He. Suddenly, a pale shadow floated quickly in front of the two people and disappeared in a flash. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 198. Ah! Ruth lived up to her expectations and screamed. Yilin was speechless. "Madam Boss, you are a woman who has experienced many battles. Can you be more steady?" Ruth's face turned red and her expression froze. For a moment, she didn't know if her thoughts had strayed to the other side of the Atlantic. She couldn't help but spit. I have experienced many battles, I am a weak little woman. Shh. Yilin's expression changed. There was no time to joke with Ruth. The surrounding jagged tree shadows were strangely twisted. Taking a closer look, the holes in the trees suddenly looked like mouths and eyes. Together with the weird laughter looming in their ears, Yilin and Ruth seemed to have accidentally entered the photo shoot. On the set of a supernatural movie, the effects are very realistic and terrifying. Hallucination? Psychic attack? Yilin looked back at Ruth. Seeing that Ruth's pupils suddenly dilated and her breathing became rapid, she didn't know if the situation she was seeing at the moment was the same as what she was seeing. In the past, when Yilin's mental power was high enough, she could also unleash similar skills. Therefore, Yilin knows very well that this method of stimulating relevant parts of the human brain through some kind of force, causing various hallucinations, has different effects depending on the person. At the very least, Yilin's current mental attributes are not weak, and coupled with Ruth's epic massage technique buff bonus, the illusion in front of her is not so realistic that it is difficult for Yilin to distinguish between real and fake. He. A white shadow without touching the ground emerged from the fog without warning, with disheveled hair and hideous wounds on its face. The long hair almost covered the face, making it impossible to see clearly. But at this moment, both Ruth and Yilin agreed that it would be better not to be able to see such a distinguished appearance. Undead. Undead. Ruth and Yilin said at the same time. But the tone of the two is completely different. There seem to be sad songs floating around. But no one can hear clearly the content of the song. Yilin suddenly felt that this melody was somewhat familiar. Accompanied by the weird songs, Bai Ying gradually approached the two of them. The way Bai Ying moves does not look like a human being. He is obviously 100 meters away. In the blink of an eye, it is 70 meters away. In the blink of an eye, it is shortened by another dozen meters. After a few back and forth, the white shadow floated quietly in front of Yilin and Ruth. Ruth was completely confused. She even forgot to scream. She just stretched out her fingers with a dull expression and trembled slightly. So it's you who is causing trouble. Yilin smiled. Undead. There was a moment of silence. The singing around them suddenly stopped. Suddenly, a ferocious smile broke out between the scars on Bai Ying's pale face, and there was still bright red blood slowly sliding down the corners of his mouth and along the ferocious wounds. After a while, a small puddle of blood formed in front of Yilin, with bubbles bubbling on it. The effect was lifelike and scary. Yilin's expression remained unchanged. Finally, Undead couldn't hold it in any longer and asked, "Aren't you afraid of me?" When Ruth saw this scene, her tense nerves finally broke. She rolled her eyes and fell backwards. Fainted. Yilin had no time to care. Because the undead has already come forward. Huh? Is it another female spirit? Aren't you afraid of me? Seeing that Ruth fainted but Yilin remained unmoved, the white shadow ghost floated forward reluctantly and asked the same line again. The surrounding fog became even denser, and there was a faint smell of blood. In the blink of an eye, the shadows of the trees in the fog were like a group of demons dancing wildly, swinging wildly, and twisting their waists. Yilin suddenly felt like she was in a KTV. Countless the illusion of non-mainstream men and women wearing weird makeup dancing on the dance floor. Yilin lowered her head and thought for a moment. Combined with Ruth's information, Yilin can roughly guess the true face of this island. At the same time, Yilin also roughly understood the reason why the crew members kept screaming in the dense forest. Sea of fog. Infested by the undead? Will calling twice at this time make it more suitable for the occasion? It took Yilin a second to give up this stupid move. After all, there is no point. When dealing with spirits, whether they are undead spirits or mother spirits, Yilin's experience has already been maxed out. Call out. A white, petite, translucent shadow emerged from Yilin's body. Yo. Bai Xiaoi held it in for a long time and was finally summoned. She couldn't help but greedily inhale the smell of freedom. Then, she suddenly realized that something was wrong with the surrounding atmosphere. Undead. Yilin didn't stop doing anything, and when Ruth completely fainted, she summoned Nai Hongxiu, whom she hadn't seen for a long time. Double the pleasure, double the consumption. While maintaining two spirits at the same time, Yilin's spiritual energy value began to decrease at a speed visible to the naked eye. Nai Hongxiu reappears in the world again. She still has the same cold face, long snow-white hair, bare feet, and red clothes, floating quietly in the mist. When Nai Hongxiu saw Yilin's respectable appearance, his smiling expression froze slightly, as if he was holding back a smile, or as if the corners of his mouth were twitching slightly. After a moment, Nai Hongxiu finally came to his senses and bowed to Elizabeth Lin Yingying in mid-air. "I've seen." Nai Hongxiu just said two words and then fell silent. Because she didn't know what title to use to address the Elizabeth Ren in front of her so that she would appear appropriate, elegant, and not excessive. Is it a girl? Or is it Miss Lin Niang? Rinko? Lady? Nai Hongxiu was very confused. Not far away. The undead floating in the air were already messy in the fog, and they were silent for a long time. The foggy dance floor also seemed to have an instant power outage. The swaying tree shadows and the sad song stopped suddenly the moment Nai Hongxiu and Bai Xiaoi appeared, and they never appeared again. Etc. The undead were confused. What's happening here? Are these two also undead? I do not know how. This is my territory. My game, my turf, my rules. Suddenly, the expression of the undead changed drastically, and his eyes glowed red, like two small lanterns in the fog, full of evil aura. Yilin watched as the mother and daughter came out of the spirit-possessed weapon to get some air, and then she remembered that there was another mother spirit waiting to be dealt with. Therefore, Yilin skillfully looked at the mother spirit who was about to open her teeth and claws to amplify her attack, glanced at the remaining spiritual energy value, and smiled slightly. Let the world feel the pain from this moment on. The next second, the mother spirit's eyes were as charming as silk, and she opened her arms towards Yilin. Oh, my love. Yilin's face was expressionless. Come again. Combox 2. Combox 3. Half an hour later. Coastside. This is a broken ship. A shipwreck stranded on the beach. Woo 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 woo. You. Bai Xiaoi understood the feeling of the mother spirit very well. She squatted in mid-air and gently patted the mother spirit on the shoulder. Stop crying. You will slowly get used to this feeling. Yilin. Hearing Bai Xiaoi's comfort, the mother spirit cried louder and more miserably. Ruth, who was so frightened that she fainted not long ago, was already awake now. What she saw in front of her made her stunned, and she couldn't close her mouth for a long time. This. Who is her captain? Can he actually control two undead souls who look stunningly beautiful? Could it be the legendary undead knight? Etc. Ruth's eyes suddenly lit up when she thought of this. These two undead are both mothers. Could it be that Elizabeth Lin's tastes are also the same? Thinking of this, the fear caused by the three undead in front of her dissipated without a trace. Instead, in Ruth's heart, there was a trace of excitement and expectation. Alas! When I think about it carefully, I feel a little excited. Yilin's reaction to the mother spirit was both surprising and not surprising. Never mind. Yilin glanced at the half-expended spiritual energy value, then waved her hand and put away Bai Xiaoi and Nai Hong's sleeves. The two spirits were out wandering around for a long enough time this time, so they probably wouldn't have too many objections to their previous neglect. Under the turns of comfort from Bai Xiaoi and Nai Hongxiu, the mother spirit's agitated mood finally calmed down. I don't know if the mother spirit is just too unlucky. The three continuous disasters that Yilin used decisively just now triggered charm, chaos, fear, and the last wave of fear effects, which somehow reproduced the terrifying feeling deep in the heart of the mother spirit. The scene made the mother spirit fall directly to the ground, twitching and crying like a helpless child. This exaggerated reaction actually made Yilin feel that she was the bad guy. Amidst the mother spirit's cries and cries, on the beach, Yilin finally understood the origin of the mother spirit. It turns out that many years ago, Alice, the name of the mother spirit, was once a noble princess of a certain country. At that time, the curse had not yet recovered, so she took a boat and wandered happily on the sea. And Alice did not escape the bloody plot after all. On the vast sea, which is now the sea area of the Misty Sea, the naval fleet where Alice belonged encountered a terrible disaster. That disaster left no one prepared at all and destroyed all the ships in an instant. In that terrible disaster, Alice witnessed the disaster itself. Just like Ruth, she was frightened and fainted. When she woke up, she followed the shipwreck and drifted to this place with the current. On a desert island. Alice, who had always lived in simplicity, lacked experience in surviving in the wild. On her third day on the deserted island, she miserably died of starvation and thirst on the beach because she could not find food and fresh water. In the end, he inexplicably became a lonely ghost wandering in the misty sea. Every time someone comes to this island, whether it is the Navy, pirates, or a neutral expedition team, the lonely Alice gives full play to the spirit of undead dedication and tries her best to add mysterious and strange legends to this island. Over time, this became a program for Alice to pass the time when she was bored. After listening to Alice's narration, Yilin remained silent. Ruth didn't know if it was because of convulsions, but suddenly she felt a surge of maternal love, and she was no longer afraid of Alice. Instead, she stepped forward and wanted to give her a loving hug. "Child, you are so pitiful." Unfortunately, Alice is currently a void spirit body, and Ruth's embrace penetrates directly through Alice's body. Ruth's expression froze. Yilin gave Ruth a strange look. "You don't even let children go, right? And maybe she's old enough to be your mother." Alice. Ruth. On how to offend two women at the same time with one sentence. Yilin thought about Alice's words several times. Alice was probably frightened by disaster haunted, and there was no flaw in her words. And Alice has no reason to deceive Yilin. But there is only one thing. Yilin suddenly asked, "What happened to you that day?" Alice's expression suddenly froze. A full 10 seconds. 10 seconds later. Alice lowered her head under the gazes of Yilin and Ruth. "Then sing softly. Yo-ho the dark sea, the gloomy sky. Yo-ho who is floating in the mist. Hey, why are you so panicked? Its eyes contain anger, its limbs are like iron towers." The expressions of Yilin and Ruth changed at the same time. This is the song of the devil. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 199. This is the devil's song that Ruth once sang in the cabin. That legendary song may bring bad luck even if it is sung. Although after Ruth sang, nothing happened. But since Yilin entered this trial, only Ruth had the courage to mention the word Demon King. This shows what the Demon King's status is in this world. The Demon King, what kind of monster is he? To the Apostle, all red names are strange. As long as there are health points, there are ways to be killed. Although the third main mission has not yet appeared, Yilin has a feeling that the next experience in this world must be related to the legendary Demon King. Alice's ballad is finally finished. Yilin saw Alice open her mouth again. Another yo sound. Alice seemed to be unfinished, and when she was about to sing again, Yilin stopped Alice in time. Although the Queen did not encounter the legendary devil after Ruth finished singing the song of the Demon King, Yilin always remembered that this was a world with a curse. No matter how lucky she was, Alice could not help singing it over and over again. To be on the safe side, Yilin decided not to mention anything about the Demon King too much for the time being before getting more information about the Demon King. And that song. Alice. She did have some unfinished thoughts at first. No one has heard her sing for a long time. But under Yilin's threatening eyes, Alice decisively gave up this tempting idea. It was almost as if everyone was on the same page and didn't say the taboo name. All for safety. Alice just sang the ballad and didn't express anything else. If the shipwreck she encountered was related to the Devil King, she would definitely understand the terror of that Demon King best. That is a monster that can destroy everything in an instant. It's no wonder that when Yilin's disaster-ridden triggered the negative state of fear, Alice was so frightened that she became convulsed. While the two were chatting happily with an undead, other pirates on the Queen also found this place one after another after Alice stopped attacking. When they saw the strange scene of Yilin having a long conversation with the terrifying undead in front of the shipwreck in the thick fog, they were all in admiration. On the captain's panel, all the loyalties that had almost dropped to negative numbers suddenly increased. Yilin silently closed the captain's panel. He knew the status of every crew member well. Alice had given up the idea of continuing to tease the Queen's crew. After all, there is Yulin here who is more terrifying than her. She didn't want to try again and be torn by the fear of being ravaged by the memories of the Demon King. Moreover, Alice witnessed with her own eyes the way Yulin controlled the two spirits. It was so terrifying. Yulin also didn't expect that this time, she would become second only to the Devil King on the virtual fear ranking list in the mind of the little mother spirit Alice. The area of the island is considered vast, roughly estimated to be similar to Titag Island. Yulin and the crew didn't even explore half of it. Moreover, the fog in the sea area is too thick, making it difficult to explore. Under Alice's guidance, Yulin and the crew found all the food that had strayed to the island in recent years. The weird thing is that these foods are stored in the form of canned foods. According to Ruth's understanding, these canned foods are high-end items that have become popular among the royal family in recent years. They are expensive and cannot be afforded by ordinary poor people. In addition to canned lunch meat, there are also many pickled canned vegetables and even canned sea fish. If there is no consumption, Yulin can even open all these cans and hold a grand banquet on a desert island. Yulin took advantage of others not paying attention and quietly filled up the rest of the storage space with various cans. He left only part of it to store fresh water. Although this time he accidentally sailed to the Sea of Mist and encountered the legendary undead, the process was very tortuous and even scared a ship of pirates half to death. But no matter what, the ending was perfect. The Queen replenished enough food and fresh water, and on the captain's panel, the amount of supplies became abundant again. The only thing that makes Yulin feel regretful is that after several years of wind, rain, and fog, the gunpowder of the cannonballs in the shipwreck has already been affected by moisture and deteriorated, making it impossible to ignite. It is a pity that the boxes of well-made cannonballs can't be ignited. Caliber shells. It took a lot of time, and under the command of Ruth, all the pirates searched the entire desert island and loaded the supplies onto the Queen in an orderly manner. In principle, the word methodical seems very funny when applied to pirates. But when every crew member of the Queen witnessed their great skeleton gentleman captain subdue a ferocious-looking undead, no one dared to make any small moves behind Yulin's back. Joke. That's a captain who can't even do anything to the undead. Who dares to make a mistake? Of course, Ruth deeply understands the bad behavior of pirates. Although they seem to be docile now, once they go crazy with hunger, they will rebel again and again when they should, and they will still paddle when they should. The pirate group has no credibility at all. So Ruth didn't treat them badly, took out a can from the supplies, distributed it, and gave the remaining crew members a good meal. And what is reflected is that, the loyalty has collectively increased a little bit. Finally, happy days are always short-lived. Under the wise leadership of the captain, this desert island no longer has the threat of the undead, but instead looks like a paradise for pirates to vacation. 2 days later. Parting is imminent. Many pirates were reluctant to leave this desert island. When boarding the ship, they couldn't help but shed a few sad tears in the direction of the desert island. She was reluctant to leave, but no one offered to stay with the lonely mother spirit of Alice. Every damn pirate knows in his heart that the reason why this island of the dead is so comfortable is because of their captain. If there is no captain to control them, the undead might turn into man-eating demons in an instant, the kind that pick their teeth with bones after eating. Yulin just laughed at the crew members' thoughts, but did not criticize them. Anyway, pirates are just useless things, just get used to them. Before leaving, Alice looked at the Queen that Yulin and Ruth were about to embark on, with a trace of reluctance on her pale face. She has lost count of how many years she has been alone on this desert island and how many years she has aged after becoming an undead. After finally meeting a strange man who was not afraid of her, but actually frightened her, Alice was a little reluctant to let him go. Alice suddenly remembered what Bai Xiao I said that day. Stop crying, You will slowly get used to this feeling. Is this what getting used to feels like? It turns out that the undead won't be annoying either. After 2 days of getting along with each other, for some reason, Ruth developed some feelings for this poor little female spirit. Before leaving, Ruth gritted her teeth, glanced at Yilin's weird mask, and couldn't help but said, "Alice, do you want to get on the boat with us?" Yilin. Alice was very surprised by Ruth's invitation. Although this sexy big sister always looked at her with a strange look, this was the first time that someone invited her on board so many years ago. If Alice had not lost the ability to shed tears as an undead soul, she might have been moved to tears at this moment. By the way, when she was ravaged by Yilin before, she could only make movements and could not shed tears at all. Alice smiled, "I am very touched, but, in fact, I am tied to one thing, because before I died, I issued a vicious curse to this world, so I was also cursed by this world. Now, go away, Alice is destined to stay here and never be reincarnated." Ruth was startled when she heard this, curse. Alice nodded without explaining much. Yilin understood. If there were no restrictions on the space for the undead to move around and they could run around the world, they would already be all over the streets and alleys. Why stay in a mysterious sea like the Sea of Mist? Ruth was also helpless about this. Yilin turned around without saying anything, preparing to board the boat, return to the Queen, and start again. Time is precious, so he should not have been delayed here for 2 days in order to replenish supplies. It will also have a certain impact on subsequent plans. Just before Yilin and Ruth were about to go to sea, Alice suddenly remembered something and her expression changed slightly. "Wait. Yilin. Ruth." Alice's eyes suddenly became cold and blurry, pointing to the invisible sea in the fog, and whispered, "Be careful, she seems to be angry." She. Is the Demon King also a female? Yilin's expression suddenly became subtle. Ruth's expression froze for a moment, and she couldn't help but ask, "She? Who is she? Could it be?" She didn't say the word devil, but anyone who understands would understand. Alice shook her head, and her cold expression was quickly replaced by another kind of confusion. "Alice doesn't know," but Dahai told Alice that she seemed very angry. Alice's lines become mysterious inexplicably. After saying this, Alice fell completely silent, her translucent body hidden in the fog, and waved to Yilin and Ruth as a farewell. The other crew members had already boarded the Queen and were eagerly waiting for Ruth and Yilin. Woof woof. Right now. A crisp bark came from the fog. Needless to say, it was naturally Uncle Wang Tiandi. Yilin slapped the back of his head. In the past 2 days, Emperor Wang Tian had disappeared inexplicably. If he hadn't barked twice at this time, Yilin might have really forgotten Emperor Wang Tian on this island. The dog ran wildly on the beach. Cheerful expression. Yilin and Ruth also stopped rowing the boat and sat there waiting for Emperor Wang to board the boat. Suddenly, Yilin narrowed her eyes slightly. Because the weather was gloomy and the fog was too thick, the field of vision was not very good, and Yilin could not see the distant scenery clearly. But it could be faintly distinguished that there seemed to be something shiny in the dog's mouth. And shortly after the dog appeared, Alice, who was about to dive into the thick fog and bid farewell to Yilin and others, suddenly widened her eyes and jumped out of the foggy forest, with a bit of panic on her pale face. Acridine. That's my hood. Yilin. Ruth. Cover. 1 minute later. The boat is docked in the shallow water. The dog directly grabbed Alice's shy corset and swam onto the boat in a skilled doggy style. Yilin looked at Guz's skillful movements and nodded secretly. It seems that this time the role play may not force the apostle to have the attribute of weak water. Let's try swimming in the sea when you have time. After Yilin had a friendly communication with Wang Tiandi, she exchanged the few remaining bones and flesh for the corset from Wang Tiandi. Emperor Wang Tian had already clearly seen the properties of corsets. It's certain that this thing definitely doesn't have the flavor of meat and bones in your mouth. So after Wang Tiandi shook off the water droplets from his hair on the boat, he happily gnawed on the meat and bones, having no time to care about anything else. Ruth also came over. With professional eyes, he looked at the corset in Yilin's hand. Although the style of this corset is old, its workmanship is very exquisite. It is definitely not something that ordinary people can own. Ruth stroked it a few times with her hands, and then said, "This corset is also covered with small inlays. If this pearl is really an antique from more than 10 years ago, it would be worth a lot of money." Ruth finished her analysis, her eyes flashing with gold coins. He. Yilin smiled. Ruth looked at style. But in Yilin's eyes, he saw through the appearance and directly saw the essence of this corset. Dash attributes. Alice's curse corset. Grade rare. Restriction female. Durability 135/500. Effect charm add 2.0, luck -0.5. Instructions click to view details. Curse. It is another piece of equipment only for women, which adds charm and reduces luck. In terms of cost effectiveness, if you reduce the insignificant luck value and increase the charm value significantly, this transaction can be regarded as a bloody profit no matter how you calculate it. However, the terrible curse in the explanation made Yilin unable to help but hesitate. He subconsciously touched the delicate earrings beside his earlobes and fell into deep thought. I turned it over and over again for a while. Yilin found that there was a pool of bright red blood on the corset in front of her chest. At first glance, the pool of blood seemed to be left yesterday. It was strangely fresh. If you were not careful, you might mistake it for a blooming flower. The roses give people a strange sense of beauty. Look at it this way. Yilin actually had the urge to put it on, and fantasized about how perfect her figure would be after putting it on. Well. The owner of the corset, Alice, drifted in from nowhere. A faint sigh. "This is my corset." "Yilin, I know. This is nonsense." Alice did not hide it. "This is also the reason why Alice cannot leave the island, because before I died, I cursed someone out of resentment, but at the same time, Alice's soul was bound to this corset forever. All these years, Alice couldn't leave." When Ruth heard this, she was puzzled. "In other words, the reason why you can't leave this island is all because of this corset. Isn't that very simple? Just take it with you." Alice shook her head, with a hint of sadness in her eyes. "Sister Ruth, think about it carefully. How many women dare to sail on the sea today and risk being cursed?" In the past 2 days, Alice had already seen that Yilin and Ruth were not men. That's why he was able to strangely become close friends with 2 human women, talking about everything. Woof woof woof. At this time, Wang Tiandi, who was chewing on the meat bones, roared inexplicably. There seems to be a trace of indiscernible grievance. Yilin ignored it. Ruth didn't bother with it. Seeing that the others had no reaction, Wang Tiandi could only lower his head and continue to chew the bones. The conversation continues. Seeing that both the 2 people and the dog were speechless, Alice continued. "On the sea, there are all men or pirates. Who would be interested in a corset?" Oh, Ruth understood. Yilin thought for a moment, maybe there are pirates who are interested in women's corsets, but you haven't discovered them yet. Ruth. Alice. Wang Tiandi's mouth curled up, as if he was holding back a smile. Yilin did not dwell on such a bad topic. 3 seconds later, Yilin stroked the silky corset in her hands. "The curse, what exactly is it?" Alice, who was floating in the air, was silent for a moment, and whispered in a very helpless tone, "A woman who wears this corset will never be able to fall in love with any man in her life. Once she falls in love, the other man will treat her with the utmost kindness. What a miserable way to die at sea." Ruth's mouth instantly opened into a shape that was difficult to close. What a terrible curse. Yilin breathed a sigh of relief. That's it? Then it's okay. Ruth. Alice. Anyway. Yilin did not hesitate and smiled slightly. I will accept this corset. Ruth's surprised mouth finally closed. She suddenly seemed to think of something, her face flushed, and her eyes were full of emotion. Rin. After a brief moment of surprise, Alice's eyes wandered uncertainly on Yilin and Ruth. But after a moment's thought, she seemed to have thought through it, nodded, and looked at them with an envious look. That's great, I wish you happiness. Yilin was startled. Did you misunderstand something? Yilin didn't ask in detail as to why Alice encountered such a curse and became undead. Because after Yilin obtained Alice's curse corset, Alice disappeared in front of the two of them with a relieved and kind smile. If she hadn't known the truth, Yilin might have mistakenly thought that Alice had fulfilled her wish and became a Buddha immediately. As a local undead, Alice is different from the weapon spirits Bai Xiao I and Nai Hongxiu, and seems to have even weirder abilities. Although he would be cursed, Yilin really didn't take it seriously. The one who cannot fall in love with a man is Elizabeth Rin. What does it have to do with Yirin? Think about it this way. Yilin looked at the silky material of the corset with great pleasure, and the more she looked at it, the more she liked it. Before boarding the ship, Yilin put away her corset. Just wait until after setting sail, and then ask Ruth to help put it on. There is still a fog all around. When all the crew saw their great captain, the skeleton gentleman, saying goodbye to that terrifying undead like a friend, their eyes were full of admiration and fear. The legendary undead in the Mist Sea were actually so vulnerable in front of their captain. In the eyes of all the crew members, the image of the skeleton gentleman became more and more tall and mysterious. It's hard to fathom, and I don't dare to think otherwise. The Queen was restocked with canned food and fresh water, and the crew regained their high spirits. Although everyone is reluctant to leave that island, as a pirate, his goal is the stars and the sea, and he is destined to wander on the sea. Staying on the island for vacation forever is just talk. No pirate can endure loneliness. At this time, loyal Charlie came licking his face. The great, respected, invincible captain. Charlie instantly spat out a bunch of lofty adjectives. For some reason, in Charlie's mouth, Yilin's titles are getting longer and more domineering. The others instantly cast contemptuous looks at loyal Charlie. Charlie didn't waste any time and told Yilin that there were several crew members who had not returned yet and asked Yilin if he wanted to set sail or wait for them to board the ship. Yilin remained silent. He just confirmed the attributes of those people in the list provided by Charlie from the captain's panel. Especially the loyalty column. Soon after Yilin confirmed, she said in a deep tone, I can feel that in addition to the undead, there seems to be some other evil spirit on this island that is ready to move. It is very likely that they encountered something on the island. As soon as these words came out, everyone's expressions changed drastically, and the deck instantly became dead silent. Suddenly someone whispered, according to the pirate code, any pirate who lags behind is destined to live or die. Life and death are destined. Everyone hummed softly at the same time, and soon there was a smile on their face again. In the end, Yilin decided to disembark from the ship to look for the stragglers amid everyone's astonished gazes. Everyone was filled with admiration. Only Ruth found it a bit strange. This guy doesn't look like such a kind person. However, because the voyage was about to begin, the Queen had experienced gunfire and disasters and was already in tatters. Before sailing, Ruth had to keep an eye on these dirty pirates and use wooden boards to repair the Queen as much as possible to the point where it would not sink at sea, etc. Ruth suddenly remembered the curse. If Alice is included, there are 3 women on board the Queen. I wonder if I can ride the wind and waves and move forward this time. Or, the undead are not actually women? Can it only be considered a mother spirit? Ruth was deeply troubled. Half a day later. The skeleton gentleman captain, who awes everyone, still wears the same elegant outfit that is incompatible with all pirates. Even his tuxedo has no wrinkles as he returns from the island again. Yulin brought back a piece of news that surprised no one at all. They are all dead. A deeper explanation is, there are other more terrifying undead on the island. Alice. In short, the deaths of these stragglers did not cause anyone to feel sad, let alone cry. Yulin did not explain any more. In the eyes of others, their great captain's back seemed to be filled with fatigue, regret, loneliness of being unable to save his companions, and indescribable sorrow. He locked himself in the captain's cabin again. Inside, it was completely locked and no one took another step out of the door. On the Queen, all the pirates were silent for just 3 seconds. They used these 3 seconds to give their captain a thumbs up. Then he continued to be busy. Yuren is in the captain's cabin. After confirming it with telekinesis, he took off his disguise again. Ah! Duan. After completely breaking away from the worries, I finally felt comfortable. Yulin swayed a few times, hesitating whether to take advantage of the abundant fresh water resources and take a luxurious, clean hot bath. When the fresh water ran out, Yulin always washed her body with sea water and then wiped it carefully with fresh water. It was very uncomfortable to finish the work in a hurry. Taking baths in sea water every day, Elizabeth Lynn's delicate skin had many wrinkles, and Ruth felt distressed every time she massaged her. Forget it, let's do business first. Yulin looked at the few lines of reminders that had not yet faded out in her retinas. Get chaos value add 67. Get chaos value add 56. Get chaos value add 44. Get chaos value. Finally. Like a belated surprise, after harvesting the last meager chaos value, Yulin had accumulated enough chaos value from the last trial in the next world, and the chaos value finally reached a satisfactory value. 50033. The Apocalypse Mount is about to reappear in the world. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 200. The third day. The Queen finally sailed again. On deck. The crew members drank swigs of rum, which had a small inventory and had already grown green algae. It was still full of flavor and they sang loudly. It's still that pirate song. On the sea, sailing days without accidents are always so boring. Of course, no pirate would desperately hope for the unexpected. It's better to be boring. To put it nicely, this is called simplicity. In the cabin, Yulin had already put on Alice's corset and had to get used to another shape again, which was very uncomfortable. There's no way, it's really hard to be a woman. Ruth was silently beside Yulin, massaging Yulin's sore shoulders. In the upper right corner of Yulin's apostle panel, there were actually abundant buffs already appearing, but Ruth's technique was so skillful that Yulin couldn't bear to ask Ruth to stop, so she simply closed her eyes and rested, enjoying it with peace of mind. At this time, Ruth no longer had the usual teasing, and there was worry hidden in her brows. Crash. Outside the cabin. From time to time there was the sound of waves lapping against the ship. Cover up the noise of the sailors on the deck. I regret to tell you that our route has deviated from the original trajectory. Ruth decided to tell the truth. After all, the captain in front of her, who knew nothing about navigation, was the real owner of the Queen. Oh. Yulin didn't even open her eyelids, she just replied in a nonchalant manner. Aren't you worried? Seeing that Yulin was so calm, Ruth patted Yulin's shoulder strangely, and her nimble hands began to become a little restless. What was the original route? Aren't you looking for the Philosopher's Stone? Yulin nodded. If you didn't remind me, I almost forgot. Ruth made a move. Yulin smiled sweetly, and Bai Mei suddenly felt happy, and her tone became erratic. If you can't confirm the direction from the navigation chart, Let's yo sa try it. When Ruth heard this, she suddenly lowered her voice. Do you believe him? Trust, in addition to treasure, is the most rare treasure on the sea. Yulin shook his head. I don't trust him, I just trust his ability. Ruth was puzzled. But now that the queen has not yet sailed out of the foggy sea, and she may encounter the undead at any time, Ruth can only follow Yulin's instructions and walk on the deck to let Sax, who is good at treasure hunting, guide the queen. Direction. After Ruth left, Yulin slowly opened his eyes and turned over. Duin. After putting on his clothes, he came to the window, opened a crack, and looked into the sea. Today, the sea is covered in fog and visibility is very low. In this era, identifying routes almost always relied on nautical charts and certain fixed landmarks on land. It is said that some high-end navigators can identify the direction of navigation through the stars. But Ruth doesn't seem to be such a high-end talent. If Yulin guessed correctly, according to the ability of astrological navigation, it should be the effect of navigation, top level. The 5th day after leaving Alice Island. Everyone found it strange. On the foggy sea, the Queen, which has always been in trouble, has never encountered bad weather again. Except for the invisible distance, everything seemed so peaceful and eerily peaceful. It's like a person who is used to being unlucky suddenly wins a jackpot and gets millions. This experience will definitely make people doubt their life and whether they have exhausted the rest of their luck. Nowadays, the pirates on the Queen are in this uneasy mood. Although the mood is complicated, the pirates sing karaoke when they should and drink alcohol when they should, and their days have not changed at all. Since going to sea, Yulin has always felt a little uneasy. He didn't know if his chest was too tight, preventing him from breathing. In the dark, there seemed to be a pair of eyes, becoming more and more solid, peering at the ship from a place Yulin could not reach. Some kind of curse? Still. Demon King? Yulin could not simply attribute this uneasiness to breast binding, or casually explain it as illusion. How come there are so many illusions in this world? Moreover, Yulin also felt a little regretful after putting on Alice's curse corset. It turns out that Alice, as a different kind of curse, cannot come and go away like the spirit of a spirit-possessed weapon. Whether Alice appears or not depends entirely on Alice's mood, which is very willful. At first, Yulin thought that she could borrow Alice's strange abilities. It seems that I think too much. According to past experience, if this corset is so awesome, its grade is definitely not just rare, but at the very least, epic. Yulin also discovered that since taking on the role of Elizabeth Lin, his behavior and way of thinking have changed slightly. Most likely, it is the inertia of the role itself that affects the existence of the ontology. Yulin is now working hard to overcome this negative influence, overcoming it. Anyway, back to business. Yulin still cares about what Yulin said to Alice. Be careful, she seems angry. Who is she? Day 6. The boring voyage finally changed. Dang 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 dang. At night. Alarms sounded like crazy. This rhythm and frequency of sounding the alarm means enemy attack. All the pirates did not hesitate. After all, their lives were the most important thing. Almost as soon as they heard the alarm, they rolled down from the hammock. With their pants lifted, they rushed onto the deck with their bare feet. Enemy, enemy, what kind of enemy? All the pirates' eyes widened. In order to show their excellence, some crew members have even started loading cannonballs into the barrel. Ah, clever pirate. Maybe the captain will like me. Many people have already guessed the hidden relationship between the captain and the first mate. Although there is no evidence. Although many crew members disagree with this taste, for the sake of the future of the pirates and their status on the ship, it is not a bad idea to feel aggrieved occasionally. 20 minutes later. In the shortest possible time, Yulin appeared on the deck dressed neatly and elegantly, like a devil dancing in the night. No one knew when the captain stepped out of the captain's cabin and stepped onto the high deck. It seemed that when they came to their senses, the captain's back was already there. It's like appearing out of thin air in the dark, so mysterious and terrifying. Although the first mate Lewis has dark skin, in the dark night, the corners of his eyes, mouth, and cheeks seem to be full of something wrong, which makes people think. Soon, under the strange looks of everyone, the first mate and the captain stood together. Xiao Sa dangled the rope, and his rope proficiency was well deserved. Sax performed several difficult juggling moves with the help of the rope in mid-air, and landed lightly behind Yulin and Ruth. Yulin raised her head and looked at the bright moon in the sky, frowning slightly. Have we sailed out of the foggy sea? Respected captain, yes. Xiao Sa's tone was neither humble nor arrogant. Ruth took out the ancient navigation chart from her arms and asked, "Why did you sound the alarm?" Sax's eyes lit up. "Your Excellency, first mate, in that direction, there is a ship tomb. Ship grave. See the boat grave again." Everyone's expression suddenly changed. Countless shipwrecks float lonely on the sea, and even wisps of black smoke are still floating on some shipwrecks. Yulin's heart moved. The black smoke floating on the surrounding shipwrecks actually contained a bit of scalding temperature. Now that the Queen was approaching the pole, the temperature was gradually decreasing. But when the Queen began to approach the ship's grave, Yulin clearly felt that the temperature has risen a lot, as if the Queen was surrounded by a wave of heat. Ruth subconsciously wanted to turn around. But if you look back, you will most likely be lost in the sea of mist again, unable to extricate yourself. Ruth looked at the backbone of the ship with pleading eyes. "Captain Skeleton Gentleman." Yulin lowered her head and thought for a moment, as if hesitating or pondering something. A few seconds later, Yulin's tone was calm, but he made a decision: continue to move forward in the original direction and pass through the ship tomb. Ruth's expression changed slightly, but she didn't say anything more. She just sighed softly and made up her mind to leave her fate in Yulin's hands. After carefully identifying the direction of the current, Ruth did not waste too much time and immediately ordered all the pirates to lower their sails and let the Queen pass through the ship grave quietly and steadily with only the push of the current. The pirates on the Queen also knew what the appearance of the ship grave meant. Every pirate did not dare to show off his anger, but they were very skillful. They quickly slowed down the Queen's speed and kept silently, slowly moving forward among various shipwrecks. Yulin took out a monocular and distinguished the remaining flags on these shipwrecks in the dark night. Ruth did the same thing. It's the Royal Navy, and pirates. But they all died here. No one survives. Is it? Ruth and Yulin made judgments on the identities of these shipwrecks in almost no particular order. The devil? No matter how bold Ruth was, she would never dare to say that name at this time. I was afraid that this ship would bring bad luck and end up with the same fate as these ship graves. After 1 hour, the Queen successfully sailed out of the ship graveyard. For an entire hour, no one dared to say another word, including Yulin and Ruth. Emperor Wang Tian also gnawed the bones obediently, not daring to bark in the silence. After all, as a dog, you must have the consciousness of a dog. After completely staying away from this ship graveyard, all the pirates cheered thoroughly. The 7th day. Dang 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 dang. Ship grave. We encountered a ship grave again. Damn, oh, we hit the ship grave again. Day 8. Hey, Captain, we encountered a ship grave again. Cheers. Hiccup. 9th day. After the Queen set sail, when the 5th ship grave appeared in front of them, Yulin and Ruth yawned again and stepped onto the deck. They both looked at each other. This can no longer be described as probability. Hee. Ruth became increasingly uneasy. But at this moment, she heard an inexplicable chuckle from behind Yulin's mask. Ruth. Yulin suddenly whispered something in a voice that only the two of them could hear, which made Ruth's scalp tingle instantly and she suddenly felt creepy. It's all around us. Emperor Wang Tian, an elite among dogs, suddenly opened his eyes, pricked up his ears, and listened.